she thought he'd forgotten about her, until she saw what he named his billion-dollar company. The name that changes everything? Their dying daughters. Vivienne Brooks stared up at the gleaming glass tower, her heart pounding against her ribs as she read the company name illuminated in elegant blue letters. Aurora Innovations. Aurora, her daughter's name. The daughter he had never met. "Mom, is this really his building?" Aurora's voice pulled Vivienne from her thoughts. At 14, their daughter was tall and willowy, with striking blue eyes that mirrored her father's. Despite the pallor of illness that had settled over her features in recent months, she radiated a quiet determination that made Vivienne's chest ache with pride. "Yes, sweetheart. This is it." Vivienne squeezed Aurora's hand, drawing courage from her daughter's presence. "Are you sure you want to come up with me? You could wait in the cafe across the street." Aurora shook her head, her dark curls bouncing with the movement. "I've waited 14 years to meet my father. I'm not waiting in a cafe." As they approached the reception desk, an elegant older woman emerged from a private elevator, her silver hair swept into an immaculate chignon, her designer suit screaming wealth and influence. "Excuse me," she said, eyeing Vivienne's modest attire with thinly veiled disdain. "This is a private building. The public tour of Aurora Innovations is on Thursdays only." "I'm here to see Red Arden," Vivienne replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Please, tell him Vivienne Brooks is here." The woman's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched. "Your son?" Aurora stepped forward, her chin lifting in a gesture so reminiscent of Rhett that Vivienne's heart twisted. "Then you're my grandmother." The color drained from the woman's face. "Security," she called sharply. "Please escort these people out. They're clearly confused." "Hello, beautiful family. If you believe children deserve to know both parents, regardless of wealth or status, hit that subscribe button. Only people like Alara Quinn, Rhett's mother, who puts money over family, would scroll past without subscribing. Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's begin this beautiful story. What's happening here, Mother?" A deep voice cut through the tension. Red Arden stood in the doorway of the elevator, as devastatingly handsome as Vivienne remembered, though time had etched fine lines around his eyes and threaded silver through his dark hair. "Nothing, darling," his mother replied smoothly. "Just some people making outlandish claims. I'm handling it." Rhett's gaze moved from his mother to Vivienne, and the recognition that flashed across his face made his mother's smile falter. "Vivienne?" he whispered, her name sounding strange on his lips after so many years. Then his eyes shifted to Aurora, and something flickered in his expression: confusion, followed by dawning realization. "Rhett," Vivienne said quietly. "This is Aurora, our daughter." 15 years had passed since Vivienne last saw Rhett Arden. 15 years since she'd told him about her pregnancy in a coffee shop near Columbia University, where they were both graduate students with big dreams. 15 years since he'd looked at her with those piercing blue eyes and said, "I can't do this, Viv. Not now. My startup just got funded. This is everything I've worked for." She remembered how the rain had pounded against the windows that day, how her tea had grown cold as she sat there, stunned into silence by his rejection, how he'd pushed an envelope across the table, a check that was supposed to take care of things, how she'd left it untouched, walking out into the downpour with tears streaming down her face, indistinguishable from the raindrops. Now here she was, standing before the headquarters of his multi-billion-dollar tech empire, clutching a letter from Aurora's doctor in her trembling hand. Their daughter needed a bone marrow transplant. Vivienne had exhausted every other option, every registry, every distant relative. Rhett was Aurora's only hope. "This is preposterous," Alara Quinn hissed, recovering her composure. "Rhett, surely you're not believing this obvious ploy for your money?" Rhett seemed frozen, his gaze fixed on Aurora's face. "How?" he began, then cleared his throat. "How is this possible? You told me you were going to." He glanced at Aurora, clearly uncomfortable discussing the past in front of her. "I never said that," Vivienne replied quietly. "You assumed. And after you made it clear you wanted nothing to do with us, I didn't see the point in correcting you. Rhett ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Vivian's chest ache. 15 years, he murmured. I've missed 15 years. Almost 15 years. Aurora corrected, a hint of defiance in her tone. But who's counting? A ghost of a smile touched Rhett's lips. You have your mother's precision, he said softly. And your eyes, Vivian added, unable to help herself. And your stubborn streak. Alara stepped between them, her voice sharp. This is hardly the place for such a personal discussion. Rhett, you have the Parker meeting in 20 minutes. Cancel it, Rhett said, his eyes never leaving Aurora. Cancel everything today. Alara's perfectly composed facade cracked slightly. You can't be serious. That meeting has been scheduled for months. The merger can wait, Rhett finished firmly. He turned to Vivienne and Aurora. Please, come up to my office. We should talk privately. As they followed Rhett into the private elevator, Alara's cold voice carried after them. Remember what I taught you, Rhett. Sentiment is the enemy of success. The golden question hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. Would Rhett choose his family over his fortune? Could a man who had built an empire on ambition find room in his heart for the daughter he never knew? And what would it cost him if he did? Rhett's office was spacious and austere, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. A large desk dominated one end of the room, its surface nearly empty save for a sleek laptop and a single framed photograph that Vivienne couldn't make out from where she stood. Please, sit. Rhett gestured to a seating area near the windows. As Vivienne settled onto the leather sofa, she noticed his hands were trembling slightly. Why now? He finally asked, turning to Vivienne. After all this time, why come to me now? Vivienne took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation she'd rehearsed countless times on the journey here. Aurora is sick, she said, her voice catching despite her best efforts. She has a rare form of leukemia. She needs a bone marrow transplant, and I'm not a match. We've tried every registry, every distant relative we could find. You're our last hope. Rhett's expression shifted from shock to concern. I'm so sorry, he said, his gaze moving to Aurora. Of course I'll get tested. Immediately. Whatever you need. Thank you. Vivian whispered, relief washing over her. She hadn't been sure what to expect. Anger, resentment, rejection, but not this immediate acceptance. This willingness to help. I'll call my doctor right now, Rhett said, reaching for his phone. We can go this afternoon. As he made the call, arranging for an immediate appointment at a private medical facility, Vivian watched Aurora studying her father with undisguised curiosity. There was so much of him in her, not just his eyes, but the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The slight furrow between her brows when she concentrated. It's all arranged, Rhett said, ending the call. They're expecting us in an hour. He hesitated, then added, I'd like to know more about you, Aurora, if that's okay. Aurora nodded, a cautious smile playing at the corners of her mouth. What do you want to know? Everything, Rhett replied simply. Your favorite color, your favorite subject in school, what books you like to read, what music you listen to, everything I've missed. As Aurora began to share snippets of her life, her love of astronomy and classical piano, her dream of becoming a marine biologist, her collection of vintage vinyl records, Vivienne watched Rhett's face. She saw wonder there, and regret, and something else she couldn't quite name. The door to the office opened without a knock, and Alara swept in, her expression carefully controlled. Rhett. The Parker representatives are waiting in the conference room. I've told them you'll be there shortly. I told you to cancel that meeting, Rhett said, his voice hardening. I'm taking Vivienne and Aurora to Dr. Mira's office. Aurora needs a bone marrow transplant, and I'm getting tested as a potential donor. Ilara's gaze flickered to Aurora, a calculating assessment that made Vivienne instinctively move closer to her daughter. I see. Well, surely this medical matter can wait until after the meeting. The merger won't proceed without your personal assurance. Nothing is more important than this, Rhett replied firmly. Not a merger, not a meeting, not the company itself. If you believe in standing up for what truly matters in life, hit that like button now. Only those who value profit over people like Alara would scroll past without showing support. Comment, family first, if you believe Red is making the right choice by prioritizing his daughter over business. Alara's lips thinned to a tight line. May I speak with you privately for a moment? Rhett hesitated, then nodded. Excuse us for just a minute, he said to Vivienne and Aurora. Please, make yourselves comfortable. As they stepped into an adjoining room, Vivienne could hear Alara's voice, low but intense. Don't be a fool, Rhett. This is obviously a ploy to get your money. If that girl really is yours, and that's a big if, where has she been for the past 15 years? Why show up now, when you're worth billions? She's sick, Mother. Rhett's voice was tight with anger. She needs a bone marrow transplant. And I'm sure her mother needs a new house, a new car, a trust fund. Alara replied scathingly. Don't let yourself be manipulated by a pretty face and a sad story. Remember what happened with your father, how that waitress nearly took everything after he died. Vivienne is nothing like that, Rhett snapped. And Aurora is my daughter. I can see myself in her face. Men always think with their hearts or lower, Alara said dismissively. At least get a DNA test before you upend your life for these strangers. When they returned to the office, the tension was palpable. Alara's smile was brittle as she addressed Vivienne. It seems my son is determined to play the white knight. I've rescheduled his meetings for tomorrow. Cruz will bring the car around to take you to the doctor. Thank you, Vivienne said stiffly, recognizing the lack of genuine hospitality in the older woman's words. As they prepared to leave, Alara placed a manicured hand on Aurora's shoulder. You look nothing like the Ardens, dear. Our family has very distinctive features, high cheekbones, aquiline noses. Rhett takes after his father's side. Aurora met her gaze steadily. Maybe I'm just lucky then. A flash of something respect perhaps crossed Alara's face before she stepped back. We'll see what the tests show, won't we? In the elevator, Rhett ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly exhausted. I apologize for my mother. She's protective. She thinks we're after your money, Aurora said bluntly. Rhett looked startled, then gave a rueful smile. You don't mince words, do you? Mom says life's too short for beating around the bush, Aurora replied with a shrug. Especially when you have leukemia. Rhett's smile faded. How long have you known about the leukemia? He asked gently. 6 months, Vivienne replied, her voice low. We tried everything else first. Chemo, radiation, nothing worked. The transplant is her best chance. Rhett nodded, his expression grave. And if I'm not a match? Vivienne closed her eyes briefly, unable to contemplate that possibility. You have to be, she whispered. You're all we have left. The question lingered between them, unspoken but heavy. What if he wasn't? What if this last hope, this desperate gamble, came to nothing? The stakes couldn't be higher. Aurora's life hung in the balance. At the medical center, everything moved with efficient precision. Blood was drawn, forms were signed, and they were assured that results would be expedited, given the urgency of the situation. When will we know? Aurora asked the nurse who had drawn her blood. Dr. Mira has put a rush on your tests, the nurse replied with a kind smile. We should have preliminary results by tomorrow morning and full compatibility results within 48 hours. As they waited for Rhett to complete his testing, Vivienne and Aurora sat in a private waiting room, the silence between them heavy with unspoken thoughts. He seems nice, Aurora finally said. Not what I expected. What did you expect? Vivienne asked, curious despite herself. Aurora shrugged. I don't know. Someone colder, I guess. More corporate. But he looks at me like he's trying to memorize my face. Vivienne felt a lump form in her throat. He missed a lot, she said quietly. That's not something you can make up for overnight. Are you still angry with him? Aurora asked, her perceptiveness catching Vivienne off guard. I was never angry, Vivienne replied, though even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Disappointed, maybe. Hurt, but not angry. Aurora gave her a look that said she didn't believe her. It's okay if you are, Angry. I think I would be if I were you. Vivienne sighed, gazing out the window at the busy street below. It's complicated, sweetheart. We were young and scared, and making decisions that would affect the rest of our lives. Your father chose his path, and I chose mine. But now those paths are crossing again. Aurora said thoughtfully. Do you think that means something? Vivienne smiled at her daughter's romantic notion. I think it means you need a bone marrow transplant, and he's the most likely match. Aurora rolled her eyes. Always so practical, Mom. Where's your sense of destiny? I think I left it in the lab at Columbia, along with my youth and my unrealistic expectations. Vivienne replied dryly. Aurora laughed, a sound that never failed to warm Vivienne's heart. Well, I think it's fate. And I think there's still something there between you two. I saw how he looked at you when he thought you weren't watching. Before Vivienne could respond, Rhett returned, accompanied by Dr. Mira, a distinguished-looking woman with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. We've taken all the samples we need for now, Dr. Mira explained. Mr. Arden has authorized our lab to work through the night on the analysis. I've also taken the liberty of reviewing Aurora's medical records that were sent over from Portland. Given the aggressive nature of her leukemia and the previous failed treatments, I concur that a bone marrow transplant represents her best chance for remission. And if I'm a match? Rhett asked. Then we can proceed with the transplant as soon as Aurora is stable enough, Dr. Mira replied. The procedure itself is relatively straightforward, for the donor will harvest stem cells from your bone marrow under general anesthesia. For Aurora, it will involve a conditioning regimen to prepare her body, followed by the transplant itself. How soon could we do it? Vivienne asked, her mind already racing ahead to the logistics. Assuming Mr. Arden is a match, and assuming Aurora's current condition remains stable, we could potentially schedule the procedure for next week. Doctor, Mira said, I'd want to run a few more tests on Aurora first, to ensure she's strong enough for the conditioning regimen. After the doctor left, Rhett turned to Vivienne and Aurora. You must be exhausted. Where are you staying? The Wren Bridge, Vivienne replied, naming a modest hotel in Midtown. Rhett frowned. That's all the way across town. Let me arrange something closer. I have a corporate apartment just a few blocks from here. It's fully furnished, completely private. We couldn't, Vivienne began, but Aurora interrupted. That would be amazing, she said, her eyes lighting up. Is it one of those fancy places with a doorman and a rooftop garden? Rhett smiled, the first genuine smile Vivienne had seen from him. It does have a doorman, and while there's no garden on the roof, there is a terrace with a pretty spectacular view of the park. Vivienne wanted to refuse, to maintain the careful distance she'd established over the years, but the excitement on Aurora's face made it impossible. Thank you, she said instead. That's very generous. As they left the medical center, Elara was waiting by a sleek black car, her expression unreadable. I thought you might need a ride, she said to Rhett. I've canceled the rest of your meetings for today, but the board is expecting a full explanation for your absence. Thank you. Mother, but Cruz is bringing my car around, Rhett replied. I'm taking Vivienne and Aurora to the corporate apartment on Central Park West. Elara's eyebrows rose. Is that wise? The Tate Hotel is just down the street. I'm sure they could accommodate Miss Brooks and her daughter. The apartment will be more comfortable, Rhett said firmly, and more private. Elara's gaze shifted to Vivienne, a calculating assessment that made Vivienne straighten her spine. Very well. I suppose you know what you're doing. She turned to Aurora, her expression softening slightly. I hope you feel better soon, dear. The Arden family has always had remarkably resilient genes. As Elara walked away, Aurora whispered, She doesn't like us very much, does she? She doesn't know us, Rhett replied, watching his mother's retreating figure. And she's always been suspicious of anyone she perceives as a threat to the family legacy. Are we a threat? Aurora asked, her directness catching Rhett off guard. He looked down at her, seeing his own questioning nature reflected back at him. No, he said firmly. Your family. She just doesn't realize it yet. Have you ever felt judged before someone truly knew you? Comment. I've been there. If you've experienced the sting of someone's assumptions, like Vivienne and Aurora, just did. Only those with hearts as cold as Alara's would scroll past without connecting. The corporate apartment was more than generous. It was luxurious beyond anything Vivienne had experienced in her modest life as a high school science teacher in Portland. 2 bedrooms, each with its own marble bathroom, a gourmet kitchen that looked like it had never been used, and a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. "This is incredible," Aurora breathed, pressing her palms against the glass. "You can see the whole city from here. It's yours for as long as you need it," Rhett said, setting their bags down in the entryway. "The refrigerator should be stocked. But if you need anything else, just call the concierge. They can get you whatever you want." Vivienne felt a familiar discomfort creeping in, the same feeling she'd had 15 years ago when Rhett had tried to solve their problem with money. "Rhett, we can't." "Please," he interrupted, his voice soft but insistent. "Let me do this. It's the least I can do after everything." After he left, promising to return the next morning with news from the medical center, Vivienne watched Aurora explore the apartment with childlike wonder. Despite her illness, despite the uncertainty that hung over them, her daughter's capacity for joy remained undiminished. "He seems nice," Aurora said later, as they sat on the terrace sharing a pizza they'd ordered from the concierge. "Not at all how I imagined him." "How did you imagine him?" Vivienne asked, curious despite herself. Aurora shrugged. "I don't know. Colder, I guess. More corporate. But he looks at me like he's trying to memorize my face, like he's afraid I might disappear." Vivienne felt a lump form in her throat. "He missed a lot," she said quietly. "That's not something you can make up for overnight." "Are you still angry with him?" Aurora asked again, clearly not satisfied with Vivienne's earlier answer. Vivienne sighed, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the city. "It's complicated, sweetheart. When your father left, I was devastated. Not just because I loved him, but because I believed in him, in us. I thought we were building something together. And then suddenly, I was alone, pregnant, terrified." "But you made it," Aurora said, a note of pride in her voice. "You finished your degree, got a job, raised me. You did it all without him." "I had help," Vivienne corrected gently. "Your grandparents, my friends. I wasn't completely alone. But yes, we made it." She reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind Aurora's ear. "And I wouldn't change a thing, because it gave me you." Later, after Aurora had fallen asleep, Vivienne stood at the window of the luxurious apartment, gazing out at the city that had once been her home. She'd loved New York once. Loved the energy and the possibilities it represented. She'd loved Rhett too, with the all-consuming passion of youth, believing they would conquer the world together. How naive she'd been. How quickly those dreams had shattered when faced with the reality of an unexpected pregnancy and Rhett's unwavering ambition. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Rhett, just heard from Dr. Mira. Preliminary results look promising. Full report tomorrow. How is Aurora?" Vivienne hesitated, then typed a reply. "Sleeping now. Thank you for everything today." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "I can't stop thinking about her, about you, about everything I missed. I'm so sorry, Viv." Vivienne stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to tell him it was too late for apologies, that sorry couldn't erase 15 years of absence. Another part, a part she'd thought long buried, ached for the connection they'd once shared. "We should focus on Aurora right now," she finally replied. "One day at a time." "Of course. Good night, Viv." "Good night, Rhett." The next morning, Rhett arrived early, bearing pastries from a bakery Vivienne remembered from their college days, and news that made her knees weak with relief. "I'm a match," he said, his eyes bright with emotion. "A perfect match, actually. Dr. Mira says it's the best possible scenario." Aurora, still in her pajamas, let out a whoop of joy and, to everyone's surprise, threw her arms around Rhett in an impulsive hug. He froze for a moment, then carefully returned the embrace, his expression a mixture of wonder and gratitude. "When can we do the procedure?" Vivienne asked. her mind already racing ahead to the logistics. As soon as Aurora is ready, Rhett replied. Dr. Mira suggested next week to give her time to prepare and to allow me to clear my schedule completely. Clear your schedule? Vivienne echoed. Rhett, you don't have to. I do, he interrupted firmly. I'm not just donating marrow, Vivienne. I want to be there for the whole process. For both of you. Before Vivienne could respond, the apartment door opened and Alara walked in without knocking, carrying a large gift basket wrapped in cellophane. I thought our patient might appreciate some comforts, she said, setting the basket on the coffee table. Her gaze swept over the apartment, noting the remains of their breakfast on the kitchen counter. The casual intimacy of the scene. I see you're making yourselves at home. Grandmother, Aurora exclaimed, the word clearly foreign on her tongue. Did you hear? Dad's a perfect match for the transplant. Alara's smile tightened at Aurora's use of dad. Yes, well, that's fortunate. The Arden genetic line has always been exceptionally strong. She turned to Rhett. The board meeting has been rescheduled for this afternoon. Parker is willing to delay the merger announcement by 1 week, but no longer. I won't be at the board meeting, Rhett said calmly. I've asked Celia to represent me. I'm taking a leave of absence to focus on Aurora's treatment. Alara's composure slipped. A leave of absence? Rhett, you can't be serious. The company is at a critical juncture with this merger. Your presence is essential. Nothing is more essential than my daughter's health, Rhett replied, his voice firm but quiet. Your daughter, Alara repeated, her tone making the words sound like an accusation. A girl you met yesterday. A girl who may or may not actually be. Mother, Rhett cut her off, his voice sharp. That's enough. Dr. Mira confirmed the genetic match. Aurora is my daughter, and she needs me. The company will survive without me for a few weeks. The tension in the room was electric. Would Alara back down, or would she continue to fight against the family reunion unfolding before her eyes? And what would it cost Rhett if he chose Aurora over the empire he'd built? Alara's lips pressed into a thin line. She turned to Vivienne, her expression cold. I hope you're satisfied. 15 years of silence, and now suddenly you need him. How convenient that his bone marrow is the only thing that can save your daughter. Mother, Rhett's voice rose in anger. Apologize to Vivienne. Now. It's all right, Vivienne said quietly. I understand Mrs. Quinn's concern for you and your company, but I want to be clear about something. She met Alara's gaze directly. I didn't come here for money. I didn't come here to disrupt Rhett's life or to make claims on his fortune. I came because our daughter is dying, and he might be able to save her. That's all. Alara studied her for a long moment, searching for deception and finding none. Brooks. She turned back to Rhett. I've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow to announce your temporary leave. We'll cite personal health reasons to avoid speculation. No, Rhett said firmly. If I'm taking leave, I want to be honest about why. Aurora is my daughter, and I won't hide her existence to protect stock prices. You can't be serious, Alara protested. The media will have a field day. Tech Billionaire's secret love child will be splashed across every tabloid in the country. Let them, Rhett replied. I'm done hiding from the truth. I abandoned Vivienne and Aurora 15 years ago because I was afraid. Afraid of responsibility, afraid of failure, afraid of what it might cost my ambitions. I won't compound that mistake by pretending Aurora doesn't exist now. If you believe in owning your mistakes and making amends no matter the cost, hit that like button now. Only those who value image over integrity like Alara would scroll past without showing support. Comment, truth over image, if you stand with Rhett's decision to acknowledge his daughter publicly. Alara's face hardened. You're making a terrible mistake, Rhett. One that could cost you everything we've built. No, Mother, Rhett said quietly. The terrible mistake was listening to you 15 years ago when you convinced me that family was a burden and ambition was all that mattered. I won't make that mistake again. After Alara left, a heavy silence fell over the apartment. Aurora, who had witnessed the entire exchange with wide eyes, finally spoke. She really doesn't want me to be your daughter, does she? Rhett crossed the room to kneel in front of Aurora's chair, taking her hands in his. My mother comes from a different world, a different time. She believes that family is about bloodlines and legacies, not love and connection. But she's wrong, Aurora, and deep down, I think she knows it. Will she ever accept us? Aurora asked, her voice small. She will, Rhett promised. It might take time, but she will. Because you're amazing. And even Alara Quinn can't resist amazing for long. Over the next few days, a tentative routine emerged. Rhett would arrive in the morning, often with breakfast or small gifts for Aurora books on marine biology, a vintage record she'd mentioned wanting, a telescope for the terrace. They would spend the day together, sometimes at the hospital for Aurora's pre-transplant tests, sometimes exploring the city when she felt strong enough. In the evenings, they would share dinner in the apartment, Aurora dominating the conversation with questions about Rhett's life, his company, his travels. Vivian watched their growing bond with a mixture of joy and trepidation. Aurora had waited her entire life to know her father, and seeing her happiness was worth any discomfort Vivian might feel. But she couldn't help worrying about what would happen after the transplant. Would Rhett remain in their lives? Or would he retreat back into his world of board meetings and business deals once the crisis had passed? The press conference, when it happened, was a carefully orchestrated affair. Rhett stood at a podium in the Aurora Innovations lobby, Alara at his side, her face a mask of supportive concern. As many of you know, Rhett began, Aurora Innovations was named after my grandmother, who raised me after my parents' deaths. What you don't know is that 15 years ago, I made a decision that I have regretted every day since. I walked away from a relationship with a remarkable woman who was pregnant with my child. A murmur ran through the assembled reporters. Alara's smile remained fixed, though her knuckles whitened where she gripped the edge of the podium. I recently learned that I have a 14-year-old daughter named Aurora, Rhett continued. By an extraordinary coincidence, she shares my grandmother's name. Even more extraordinary, she needs a bone marrow transplant, and I am a perfect match. I will be taking a leave of absence from Aurora Innovations to focus on my daughter's treatment and recovery. During this time, our COO, Celia Vaughn, will assume my responsibilities. The questions came fast and furious after that. Rhett fielded them with calm dignity, refusing to share details about Aurora's condition or Vivian's life, emphasizing only his commitment to being there for his daughter now. As they watched the press conference on television from the apartment, Aurora turned to Vivienne with wide eyes.
He told everyone about me. He's not ashamed.
Of course he's not ashamed, Vivian said, squeezing her hand. How could anyone be ashamed of you? But his company. Grandmother said the stock prices would fall. Some things are more important than stock prices, Vivian replied. Your father is beginning to understand that. The day of the transplant arrived, with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Aurora was admitted to the hospital early in the morning, her face pale, but determined, as she changed into a hospital gown. You're going to be fine, Vivian assured her, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. Your father's cells are going to make you strong again. I know, Aurora said with a small smile. Arden genes. Remember? Exceptionally strong, according to grandmother. Rhett arrived shortly after, having completed his own pre-procedure preparations. He looked different in the simple hospital scrubs, more vulnerable, more human than the polished CEO who had first greeted them in his office. Ready for this? He asked Aurora, sitting on the edge of her bed. Ready to kick leukemia's butt, she replied with a grin. Are you ready to have holes poked in yours? Rhett laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet hospital room. Small price to pay to help you get better. As the nurses came to take Aurora for her conditioning treatment, Rhett pulled Vivian aside. I want you to have this, he said, pressing a small velvet box into her hand. Rhett, I can't. It's not what you think, he interrupted gently. Inside was a delicate silver key on a simple chain. What is this? Vivian asked, confused. It's the key to my grandmother's cottage in the Berkshires, Rhett explained. I thought, after Aurora recovers, maybe the three of us could go there. It's peaceful, beautiful, a good place to heal. Vivian stared at the key, emotions warring within her. Rhett, I don't know what's happening here. Between us, I mean. It's all happening so fast. I know, he agreed. And I'm not asking for anything, Viv. I just want you to know that I'm here not just for Aurora, but for you too, if you'll let me be. Before she could respond, Dr. Mira appeared in the doorway. We're ready for you, Mr. Arden. The procedure itself was relatively straightforward. Rhett was placed under general anesthesia while doctors extracted bone marrow from his hip bones. The harvested cells were then processed and prepared for transfusion into Aurora's bloodstream. Vivienne sat by Aurora's bedside as the cells were infused, watching the clear liquid drip slowly into her daughter's veins, carrying with it the hope of healing, of a second chance. It looks like water, Aurora observed, watching the IV. Hard to believe it's actually Dad's cells. The most powerful things often look the simplest, Vivienne replied, squeezing her hand. Like love. You can't see it, but it can change everything. Aurora studied her mother's face. You still love him, don't you? Vivienne hesitated, caught off guard by the direct question. It's complicated, sweetheart. That's not an answer, Aurora pressed. Do you love him? I love the man I knew 15 years ago, Vivienne finally said. This Rhett. I'm still getting to know him. Aurora seemed satisfied with that answer, turning her attention back to the IV. Well, I like him. He's trying really hard. Yes, Vivienne agreed softly. He is. Have you ever witnessed someone making a genuine effort to right their wrongs? It's one of life's most powerful transformations. Comment. Second chances matter if you believe people deserve the opportunity to make amends for past mistakes. The days following the transplant were a blur of hospital rooms, medical updates, and cautious optimism. Rhett was discharged the day after the procedure, sore but in good spirits, and immediately took up residence in a chair beside Aurora's bed. Alara visited once, bringing an enormous arrangement of flowers and a tablet loaded with classic films to help pass the time. Her interaction with Aurora was stiff, but not unkind, and she even managed a civil conversation with Vivienne about Aurora's education. She's clearly intelligent, Ilara observed as they stood in the hospital corridor while Rhett sat with Aurora. Blair University has an excellent marine biology program. The Arden name would ensure her acceptance. Aurora will get into any program she chooses on her own merits, Vivienne replied firmly. She doesn't need the Arden name for that. Ilara studied her with newfound respect. You've raised her well, she conceded. Independent. Confident. Those are Arden traits too, you know. They're human traits, Mrs. Quinn. Vivienne corrected gently. Not exclusive to any family, no matter how distinguished. Ilara's lips curved in a small, reluctant smile. You're not what I expected, Vivienne Brooks. What did you expect? Someone more. Opportunistic. Someone who would have contacted Rhett years ago, when the company first became successful. Someone who would be demanding trust funds and public acknowledgement. I never wanted Rhett's money, Vivienne said quietly. I just wanted Aurora to have a chance to know her father. I would have preferred it happened under different circumstances, but life rarely unfolds according to our preferences. Ilara nodded thoughtfully. No, it rarely does. She glanced through the window at Rhett, who was reading aloud to Aurora from a book about ocean exploration. He's different with her, softer. I haven't seen him like this since he was a boy. Children have a way of bringing out our true selves, Vivienne observed, the good and the bad. Indeed, Ilara murmured. Indeed they do. During Aurora's recovery, Rhett was a constant presence. He worked remotely when necessary, but more often than not, he delegated responsibilities to his executive team, prioritizing time with his daughter. He was there for the good days, when Aurora's energy returned and her cheeks flushed with color, and for the bad days, when nausea and fatigue left her pale and listless. One evening, about 3 weeks after the transplant, Vivienne returned from a quick trip to the pharmacy to find Rhett and Aurora huddled over a chessboard in the living room of the apartment. Deep in concentration, she's beating me, Rhett announced without looking up. For the 3rd time today. 4th, Aurora corrected with a grin. You're terrible at this. I'm letting you win, Rhett protested, though his proud smile belied his words. Sure you are, Aurora replied, moving her queen with a flourish. Checkmate, by the way. Rhett groaned dramatically, clutching his heart. Destroyed by my own flesh and blood. The humiliation. Aurora's laughter filled the room, bright and clear, and Vivian felt something shift inside her. This was what she had always wanted for her daughter. Not just a father, but this. Joy, connection, belonging. Later, after Aurora had gone to bed, Vivian found Rhett on the terrace, gazing up at the stars. Thank you, she said, joining him at the railing, for everything you've done for her. Rhett shook his head. Don't thank me, Viv. I should have been there all along. Yes, she agreed. You should have. But you're here now. And that matters to her. To both of us. He turned to face her, his expression serious. Dr. Mira says Aurora's numbers are improving every day. Soon, she'll be strong enough to travel. Vivian nodded, a familiar weight settling in her chest. We'll need to get back to Portland. She has school, friends. Our life is there. I've been thinking about that, Rhett said carefully. What if it didn't have to be? What do you mean? Aurora Innovations has been considering opening a research facility on the West Coast. Portland would be an ideal location. I could relocate, be closer to Aurora. Vivian stared at him, stunned by the implication. You would move your entire life to Portland? For us? For Aurora, he clarified, though his eyes told a different story. And yes, I would. In a heartbeat. Rhett, you can't just... I can, he interrupted gently. I've spent 15 years building a company, Viv. I've achieved everything I thought I wanted. But these past few weeks with you and Aurora have shown me what really matters. I don't want to miss another day of her life. Or yours, if you'll let me be part of it. Vivienne felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. It's not that simple. It can be, Rhett insisted, taking her hands in his. I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight, or to pick up where we left off. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that I've changed, that I can be the father Aurora deserves, and the man you once believed I could be. Vivienne looked up at him, at the face she had once known better than her own. Time had changed him, as it had changed her. But in his eyes, she saw the same spark that had drawn her to him all those years ago. Intelligence, determination, and now, a depth of feeling that took her breath away. One step at a time, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Rhett's smile was like the dawn breaking after a long night. One step at a time, he agreed, squeezing her hands gently. The next morning, Alara arrived unannounced, carrying a thick folder and wearing an expression that Vivienne had come to recognize as her business face. Rhett, I need to speak with you, she said, barely acknowledging Vivienne and Aurora at the breakfast table. Privately. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Vivienne and Aurora, Rhett replied, not moving from his seat. We don't have secrets in this family. Alara's eyebrow arched at the word family, but she sat down, placing the folder on the table. Very well. The board is concerned about your extended absence. The stock has dropped 12% since your announcement, and Parker is threatening to pull out of the merger entirely. Let them, Rhett said calmly, buttering a piece of toast. There are other partnerships we can pursue. This is exactly the kind of cavalier attitude that has the board worried. Alara snapped. You've worked for 15 years to build this company, and now you're willing to let it falter because of personal matters. Aurora set down her orange juice, her expression troubled. Is the company in trouble because of me? No, Rhett said firmly, shooting his mother a warning look. The company is fine. Stock prices fluctuate all the time, and Aurora Innovations is strong enough to weather a temporary dip. But grandmother said, your grandmother is concerned, Rhett interrupted gently. But she needs to understand that some things are more important than business. He turned to Alara. Mother, I appreciate your concern for the company, but my decision stands. I'm relocating to Portland to be near Aurora. Alara's composure slipped. Portland? You can't be serious. The headquarters is here. The board is here. I'm here. The headquarters will remain in New York. Rhett explained patiently. I'll commute when necessary for important meetings. But my primary residence will be in Portland. Because of a child you've known for less than a month? Elara's voice rose in disbelief. Because of my daughter, Rhett corrected firmly. And because I've missed 14 years of her life already, I won't miss any more. The tension in the room was palpable. Would Elara finally accept her son's decision? Or would she continue to fight against the family he was trying to build? And what would it cost all of them if this rift couldn't be healed? Elara turned to Vivienne, her eyes cold. This is your doing. You've manipulated him. Used that child too. That's enough. Rhett cut her off, his voice sharp. Vivienne hasn't asked me for anything, not money, not time, not a move across the country. This is my decision, Mother. Mine alone. Elara stood, gathering her dignity around her like a cloak. I see. I'm wasting my time here. But mark my words, Rhett. This infatuation with playing family man will pass. And when it does, I hope the damage to your company and your reputation won't be irreparable. After she left, a heavy silence fell over the breakfast table. Aurora pushed her food around her plate, her earlier appetite gone. I'm sorry about that, Rhett said finally. My mother has always been protective of what she considers the family legacy. She hates us, Aurora said quietly. No, sweetheart, Vivienne assured her. She doesn't hate us. She's afraid. Afraid? Aurora looked up, confused. Of what? Of losing your father, Vivienne explained. For 15 years, she's had him all to herself. His company, his success, his attention. Now suddenly there's you and me and a whole different life that doesn't include her. That's frightening for someone like Elara. Rhett looked at Vivienne with newfound appreciation. You always did understand people better than I did. It comes with teaching high school, Vivienne replied with a small smile. Teenage drama gives you insight into human nature. Aurora brightened slightly. So she might come around? Eventually? I think she might, Vivienne said, though she wasn't entirely convinced. If we give her time. 6 months later, Aurora stood on the stage of her high school auditorium in Portland, accepting an award for academic excellence. From the front row, Vivienne and Rhett watched with matching expressions of pride and wonder. That's our daughter, Rhett whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Vivienne nodded, her heart full to bursting. Yes, she replied, slipping her hand into his. That's our daughter. The transplant had been successful beyond their most optimistic hopes. Aurora's body accepting Rhett's cells as if recognizing the genetic blueprint they shared. Her recovery had progressed steadily, each checkup bringing better news than the last, until finally, 3 months after the procedure, her doctor had pronounced her cancer in remission. Rhett had made good on his promise, establishing Aurora Innovations' West Coast headquarters in Portland. He'd purchased a comfortable home in Vivienne's neighborhood, close enough to be present in Aurora's daily life, but maintaining a respectful distance as they all adjusted to their new reality. As Aurora descended from the stage, clutching her award certificate, Vivienne felt Rhett's hand tighten around hers. These small moments of connection had become more frequent in recent months. A touch, a glance, a shared smile that spoke of growing comfort and rekindled feelings neither was quite ready to name. She looks so much like you when you're proud, Rhett murmured, his eyes never leaving their daughter, that little lift of her chin, the way her eyes crinkle at the corners. Vivienne smiled, warmed by his observation. She has your confidence on stage. I was always terrified of public speaking. Are you kidding? You were magnificent defending your thesis. The entire faculty was intimidated by you. I threw up in the bathroom right before, Vivienne confessed with a laugh. Twice. Rhett turned to her, surprise and delight mingling in his expression. You never told me that. There are a lot of things we never told each other, Vivienne replied softly. We were so young, so focused on our individual paths. Before Rhett could respond, Aurora reached them, her face flushed with excitement. Did you see? Professor Rowan said, my research could qualify for the National Science Competition. We saw, Rhett said, rising to embrace her. You were brilliant up there. Absolutely brilliant, Vivienne agreed, joining the hug. For a moment, the three of them stood together, a family circle complete after years of being broken. "We should celebrate," Rhett declared as they made their way out of the auditorium. "Dinner at Lancaster's? My treat." Aurora's eyes lit up. Lancaster's was Portland's most exclusive restaurant, with a 3-month waiting list for reservations. "Can we really get in?" "Your father knows the owner," Vivienne explained, exchanging an amused glance with Rhett. What she didn't say was that Rhett had recently purchased the restaurant, along with several other Portland businesses, as part of his commitment to investing in the community. If you believe in celebrating life's victories, both big and small, hit that like button now. Only those who take joy for granted would scroll past, without acknowledging the importance of marking these precious moments. Comment: celebrate every win. If you believe in honoring achievements like Aurora's. At Lancaster's, they were escorted to the best table, overlooking the Willamette River. As they settled in, Vivienne couldn't help but marvel at how natural it felt. The three of them together like this. In the 6 months since they'd returned from New York, they'd established a rhythm, a new kind of family dynamic that honored their past while creating space for their future. "I have news," Aurora announced as their appetizers arrived. "I've been accepted into the summer marine biology program at Tate Institute." "Aurora, that's wonderful," Vivienne exclaimed, knowing how much her daughter had wanted this opportunity. "When did you find out?" "This morning. I wanted to wait until tonight to tell you both." Aurora's gaze shifted between her parents, a hint of uncertainty in her expression. "It's 6 weeks in San Diego. I'd be living in the student dorms." "6 weeks," Rhett repeated, his tone carefully neutral. "That's a significant commitment." Vivienne recognized the concern beneath his words. 6 weeks would be the longest they'd been apart since discovering each other. "It's an incredible opportunity," she said gently. "Tate is the best marine research institute in the country." Rhett nodded, his expression softening. "Of course it is, and you absolutely deserve this." He raised his water glass in a toast. "To Aurora, future marine biologist extraordinaire." As they clinked glasses, Vivienne caught the flash of relief in Aurora's eyes. She understood her daughter's worry. Rhett had missed so much of her life. It was natural for her to fear he might resist her independence now. Later, as Aurora excused herself to greet a friend she'd spotted across the restaurant, Rhett turned to Vivienne, his expression thoughtful. 6 weeks is a long time," he said quietly. "It is," Vivienne agreed. "But it's also exactly what she needs right now. A chance to spread her wings, to define herself beyond her illness and beyond us." Rhett nodded slowly. "You're right. It's just—" He broke off, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture that still made Vivienne's heart skip. "I feel like I just found her, and now she's leaving." "Not leaving," Vivienne corrected gently. "Growing. There's a difference." "When did you get so wise?" Rhett asked, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Somewhere between 3 a.m. feedings and teenage driving lessons," Vivienne replied dryly. "Parenting has a way of forcing wisdom upon you." Rhett's smile faded, regret shadowing his features. "I missed all of that." Vivienne reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "Yes, you did. But you're here now, supporting her dreams, celebrating her successes. That matters, Rhett, more than you know." He turned his hand beneath hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "And what about your dreams, Viv? We talk so much about Aurora, about my work, but rarely about what you want." The question caught Vivienne off guard. For so long, her dreams had been entirely focused on Aurora, her health, her happiness, her future. The idea of wanting something for herself felt almost foreign. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "Teaching has been fulfilling, but lately I've been thinking about research again. The school has offered me a position developing their advanced science curriculum." "You'd be amazing at that," Rhett said, his eyes warming with admiration. "You always had a gift for making complex concepts accessible." "It would mean more hours, more responsibility." Vivienne continued, warming to the subject. "I've been hesitant to take it on, especially with Aurora's health being so precarious. But now," Now she's getting stronger every day. Rhett finished for her and preparing to spend 6 weeks studying marine biology in San Diego. Vivienne nodded, a sense of possibility unfurling within her. Exactly. You should do it, Rhett said firmly. And if you need any support, flexible hours, resources, for the program, you know I'm here. I don't need your money, Rhett, Vivienne replied, though there was no heat in her words. I know you don't, but I'd like to help, if you'll let me. Not because you need it, but because I want to be part of making your dreams come true, the way you've always supported Aurora's. Something shifted between them in that moment, a subtle realignment of their relationship. For the first time since reuniting, they were discussing a future that extended beyond co-parenting, beyond Aurora's immediate needs. Aurora returned to the table, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Tessa's parents invited me to join them for a weekend at their beach house next month. Can I go? As they discussed the details, Vivienne found herself watching Rhett, the attentive way he listened to Aurora, asked questions, considered the logistics. He had slipped into the role of father with a natural grace that sometimes took her breath away. Later that night, after dropping Aurora at home, Rhett walked Vivienne to her door, a habit he'd developed over the months of family dinners and outings. Thank you for tonight, Vivienne said, lingering on the porch. Seeing you support Aurora's Tate opportunity meant everything to her. I'm learning, Rhett replied with a self-deprecating smile. Slowly, perhaps, but I'm learning that being a good parent sometimes means letting go. The hardest lesson of all, Vivienne agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, the spring night wrapping around them like a gentle embrace. In the distance, an owl called, its haunting cry echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Viv, Rhett began, then hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. I've been thinking about our relationship. Vivienne felt her pulse quicken. These past 6 months have been extraordinary. Getting to know Aurora, becoming part of her life, and reconnecting with you. He took a step closer, his eyes searching hers. I know we agreed to take things slowly, to focus on Aurora's recovery, but I find myself wanting more. More? Vivienne echoed, though she knew exactly what he meant. She had felt it too, the gradual shift from cautious co-parents to something deeper, something that echoed their past connection while honoring the people they had become. I'd like to take you to dinner, Rhett said simply. Just the two of us. Not to discuss Aurora or medical appointments or school events. Just us. Vivienne felt a smile spreading across her face, warm and genuine. Are you asking me on a date, Rhett Arden? I believe I am, he replied, his own smile matching hers, though I admit I'm a bit out of practice. Well, in that case, Vivienne said, her heart light with a joy she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. I accept. Have you ever felt that flutter of excitement when reconnecting with someone special? That moment when possibility hangs in the air? Comment, I know that feeling if you've experienced that beautiful uncertainty that comes with new beginnings. Their first official date was nothing like the elaborate outings of their graduate school days. Instead of an expensive restaurant or exclusive club, Rhett took her to a small Italian bistro tucked away on a quiet street in Portland's Pearl District. The space was intimate, with soft lighting and a jazz trio playing in the corner. How did you find this place? Vivienne asked as they were seated at a corner table far from the windows and prying eyes. Despite Rhett's efforts to maintain a low profile in Portland, his status as a tech billionaire made privacy a constant challenge. My assistant, Rhett admitted with a grin. I told her I needed somewhere quiet, romantic, and absolutely free of business associates or tech journalists. Romantic, huh? Vivienne teased, enjoying the slight flush that colored his cheeks. Well, I was hoping. He trailed off, suddenly looking more like the earnest graduate student she'd fallen in love with than the confident CEO he'd become. Vivienne reached across the table, taking his hand. It's perfect, Rhett, truly. As the evening progressed, they carefully navigated the terrain of their shared past and separate journeys. Rhett spoke of the early days of Aurora Innovations, the sleepless nights and constant pressure that had defined his 20s. I told myself it would all be worth it, he said, swirling the wine in his glass. That once I achieved success, I'd have time for a personal life, for relationships. But the goalposts kept moving. There was always another milestone, another acquisition, another market to conquer. And now? Vivian asked softly. Rhett's gaze met hers, steady and sure. Now I understand what really matters. It took almost losing it forever to see clearly. Vivian shared her own journey. The challenges of raising Aurora alone, building a career in education, while managing her daughter's health concerns, the support network of friends and family that had sustained them through difficult times. You created a beautiful life for her, Rhett said, his admiration evident. For both of you. We did the best we could, Vivian replied. But there were times, especially when she was very young, that I wondered if I'd made the right choice. If I should have tried harder to make you understand what was at stake. Would it have made a difference? Rhett asked, the question that had haunted them both. Vivian considered this, weighing the truth against kindness. I don't know, she finally said. The Rhett I knew then was so focused on his ambitions, so certain of his path. But perhaps that's unfair. People can surprise you. Like Aurora, surprising us both by beating her leukemia? Exactly like that, Vivian agreed, with a smile. She gets her determination from both of us, I think. As Rhett drove her home, a comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. At her door, he hesitated, clearly uncertain about how to end the evening. Vivian solved his dilemma by rising on tiptoe and pressing a gentle kiss to his lips. Thank you for tonight, she murmured. Rhett's arms came around her, drawing her closer for a second kiss, deeper than the first. When they finally parted, both were slightly breathless. I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you in my office, Rhett admitted, his forehead resting against hers. Even with our teenage daughter standing right there? Vivian teased. Well, perhaps not exactly then, he conceded with a laugh. But soon after, in the weeks that followed, they continued their careful courtship, finding moments for themselves amidst the busy rhythm of family life. They were discreet around Aurora, not wanting to complicate her adjustment to having her father in her life with the additional dynamic of her parents' rekindling relationship. But Aurora, perceptive as always, wasn't fooled. One evening, as Vivian prepared for another work dinner with Rhett, her daughter appeared in the doorway of her bedroom, a knowing smile on her face. That's the third time this week you've worn lipstick, Aurora observed casually. And you changed your outfit twice. Vivian felt her cheeks warm. I have a dinner meeting with the curriculum committee, she said, the lie sounding hollow even to her own ears. Aurora replied, clearly unconvinced. And does this committee meeting happen to include a certain tech CEO who keeps sending you flowers? Caught, Vivian sighed, turning to face her daughter. How long have you known? Since about 5 minutes after it started, Aurora said with a grin. You two aren't exactly subtle, the way you look at each other. It's kind of sweet, actually, in a gross, parental sort of way. Vivian sat on the edge of her bed, patting the space beside her. We should have talked to you about this. It's just we wanted to be sure before involving you. Your relationship with your father is still so new, and we didn't want to complicate things. Aurora joined her, leaning her head against Vivian's shoulder in a gesture that reminded her of when her daughter was small. Mom, I'm not a little kid. I understand that relationships are complicated. And for what it's worth, I think it's cool. You do? Yeah. I mean, it's like a movie, right? Long-lost love reunited by their sick daughter. Aurora's tone was light, but Vivian could hear the emotion beneath it. It's not quite that simple, Vivian cautioned. Your father and I have a lot of history, a lot to work through. But you're trying, Aurora pointed out. That's what matters. And honestly, Mom, I've never seen you this happy. Not in my whole life. Vivian wrapped an arm around her daughter, marveling at her wisdom and generosity of spirit. When did you get so grown up? Probably somewhere between nearly dying and watching my parents fall in love again, Aurora replied with characteristic directness. Tends to give a girl perspective. That night, over dinner at Rhett's house, Vivienne shared her conversation with Aurora. She knows about us, she concluded. And apparently, approves. Rhett's relief was palpable.
I've been wanting to talk to her, but I wasn't sure how. I don't want her to think I'm trying to replace the family unit you've built.
You're not replacing anything, Vivienne assured him. You're adding to it, completing it, in a way. Rhett reached across the table, taking her hand. I love you, Viv, he said simply. I never stopped, not really. Even when I convinced myself I had to choose between you and my ambitions, there was always a part of me that belonged to you. Vivienne felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. I love you too, she whispered. But Rhett, we can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened. We're different people now. I know, he agreed, squeezing her hand. And I don't want to go back. I want to move forward, together, building something new that honors who we've become. The week before Aurora was scheduled to leave for her summer program at Tate Institute, Rhett suggested a family weekend at the Oregon coast. He rented a beautiful beach house with panoramic views of the Pacific, spacious enough for privacy, but cozy enough for togetherness. To their surprise, Elara called the day before they were set to leave. I'll be in Portland tomorrow, she announced when Rhett answered the phone. I have some papers for you to sign regarding the Parker merger. Mother, we're leaving for the coast in the morning, Rhett replied. There was a pause on the line. Family weekend, Rhett explained. Aurora leaves for her summer program next week, and we wanted some time together before she goes. Another pause, longer this time. I see. Well, perhaps I could join you, briefly, just to get the signatures, and see how Aurora is doing. Rhett covered the phone and looked at Vivienne, eyebrows raised in silent question. Vivienne hesitated, then nodded. It was time to extend an olive branch. We'd be happy to have you, Mother, Rhett said, his surprise evident in his voice. I'll text you the address. If you believe in the healing power of family gatherings, even when relationships are complicated, hit that like button now. Only those with hearts as closed as Elara's once was would scroll past without acknowledging the importance of these moments. Comment, family healing, if you've witnessed the transformative power of bringing loved ones together. Elara arrived at the beach house late the following afternoon, looking distinctly out of place in her tailored suit and designer heels. She carried a slim portfolio and a small, elegantly wrapped package. Grandmother, Aurora exclaimed, genuinely pleased to see her. In the months since the transplant, she had maintained a cautious but hopeful attitude toward Elara, sending her occasional emails about her research projects and school achievements. Hello, dear, Elara replied, her usual reserve softening slightly as she took in Aurora's healthy appearance. You look well. The sea air agrees with you. We were just about to take a walk on the beach, Vivienne said, stepping forward. Would you like to join us? Or would you prefer to rest after your drive? Elara glanced down at her impractical shoes, then back at the three expectant faces. I suppose I could change into something more suitable, she conceded. If you don't mind waiting a few minutes. To everyone's surprise, Elara emerged from her room wearing slim black pants, a cashmere sweater, and most shocking of all, a pair of sensible walking shoes. Mother, Rhett said, unable to hide his astonishment. I don't think I've ever seen you in anything but heels. I do occasionally dress for comfort, Rhett, Elara replied dryly. Contrary to what you might believe, I don't sleep in Louboutins. Aurora giggled, delighted by this glimpse of humor from her usually stern grandmother. Come on, she said, impulsively taking Elara's hand. I want to show you the tide pools. There's an amazing starfish colony just down the beach. As Aurora led Elara away, chattering enthusiastically about marine ecosystems, Rhett turned to Vivienne with wonder in his eyes. Did you see that? My mother is wearing flat shoes and listening to a lecture on starfish. I feel like I'm in an alternate universe. People can change, Vivienne reminded him. Even Elara Quinn. The weekend unfolded with unexpected harmony. Elara remained for dinner, then breakfast, then somehow the entire weekend. She listened attentively as Aurora explained her research plans for the summer program, asked thoughtful questions about Vivian's curriculum development project, and even joined in a fiercely competitive board game night that left everyone laughing. On their final evening, after Aurora had gone to bed, the three adults sat on the deck, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. "I owe you both an apology," Elara said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Particularly you, Vivian." Vivian and Rhett exchanged surprised glances. "When Rhett told me about Aurora," Elara continued, her gaze fixed on the horizon, "I was afraid. Afraid he was being manipulated. Afraid he would lose focus on the company he'd worked so hard to build. But mostly, I was afraid of losing him." She turned to look at them directly. "I've been alone for a very long time. After Rhett's father died, I poured everything into raising him, into helping him achieve the success that had eluded his father. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that success and happiness were the same thing." "Mother," Rhett began, but Elara held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. These past months, watching you with Aurora, seeing how you've changed, I realized I was wrong. Success without connection is hollow. I pushed you to choose ambition over family 15 years ago, and in doing so, I robbed you of the very thing that would have made your success meaningful." She turned to Vivienne. "And I robbed you and Aurora of the support you deserved. For that, I am truly sorry." Vivienne was speechless, moved by the unexpected vulnerability from this proud, formidable woman. "Thank you, Mother," Rhett said quietly. "That means a lot to both of us." Elara nodded, composing herself. "Well, enough sentimentality for one evening. I do actually have those papers for you to sign, Rhett. The Parker merger is proceeding, with or without your daily involvement. The board has finally accepted that you can run the company from Portland just as effectively as from New York. With Celia's help," Rhett acknowledged. "She's proven to be an exceptional COO. Yes, well," Elara sniffed, "she's adequate. Though I still maintain that the New York headquarters should remain the primary base of operations." Rhett laughed, the tension broken. Some things never change. The day Aurora left for Tate Institute was bittersweet. They drove her to the airport together, the car loaded with carefully packed suitcases and equipment. Aurora chattered excitedly about the research projects she hoped to join, the professors she was eager to meet, barely masking her nervousness with enthusiasm. At the security checkpoint, she hugged them both fiercely. "6 weeks isn't that long," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. "And I'll call every day." "Every other day is fine," Vivian assured her, fighting back tears. "We want you to enjoy the experience, not spend it checking in with your parents. But definitely text when you land," Rhett added, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "And if you need anything at all, I can be in San Diego in 2 hours." Aurora rolled her eyes, but her smile was tender. "I know, Dad. Your private jet is very impressive." She hugged him again, whispering something in his ear that made him blink rapidly. Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd of travelers, her dark curls visible for a moment before she turned a corner and vanished from sight. In the car, Vivienne finally let her tears fall. "I've never been away from her for more than a weekend," she admitted, accepting the handkerchief Rhett offered. "Not in her entire life." "She'll be fine," Rhett said, though his own voice was rough with emotion. "She's strong and smart and incredibly capable, like her mother." Vivienne managed a watery smile. "And stubborn and ambitious, like her father." "God help the marine biology world," Rhett agreed with a chuckle. The house felt strangely empty, without Aurora's vibrant presence. Vivienne found herself wandering from room to room that evening, touching her daughter's belongings, already missing the sound of her music and her laughter. When the doorbell rang, she was surprised to find Rhett standing on her porch, a picnic basket in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "I thought you might not want to be alone," he said simply. Vivienne felt a rush of gratitude and love so intense it nearly took her breath away. "I don't," she admitted, stepping back to let him in. They ate dinner on the back patio, sharing memories of Aurora's childhood and their own college days. As the evening deepened into night, Their conversation turned to the future. "I've been thinking about what happens next," Rhett said, refilling their wine glasses. "After Aurora goes to college." "That's still a few years away," Vivian reminded him. "I know, but I've missed enough time already. I don't want to waste a single day." He set down his glass, taking her hands in his. "Move in with me, Viv." Vivian blinked, caught off guard by the directness of his request. "Not right away," he clarified quickly. "But soon. We could look for a place, together. Something that would be ours. Not mine, or yours. A fresh start. Rhett, I don't know." Vivian hesitated, though the idea held more appeal than she wanted to admit. "It's a big step." "It is," he agreed. "But I think we're ready. I know I am." His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. "I want to fall asleep beside you every night and wake up with you every morning. I want to build a life with you. Viv, the life we should have had all along." Vivian felt her resistance melting under the sincerity of his gaze. "What about Aurora? How would she feel about this?" Rhett smiled. "I may have already discussed it with her. Hypothetically, of course." "You did what?" Vivian exclaimed, though she couldn't summon any real indignation. "She's very supportive," Rhett continued, his eyes twinkling. "Her exact words were, 'It's about time, Dad. Mom's been alone way too long.'" Vivian laughed despite herself. "That sounds like our daughter." "So?" Rhett prompted gently. "What do you think?" Vivian took a deep breath, allowing herself to imagine the future he was proposing: mornings sharing coffee, evenings discussing their days, building traditions and memories together. It was everything she'd once dreamed of, everything she'd forced herself to stop wanting when he walked away. "Yes," she said finally, her voice steady and sure. "Let's do it. Let's build a home together." The joy that spread across Rhett's face was like sunrise breaking over the horizon, radiant, transformative, full of promise. He pulled her into his arms, his kiss a seal on their new beginning. The 6 weeks of Aurora's absence passed more quickly than Vivian had anticipated, filled with house hunting expeditions, curriculum development for her new position, and the gradual merging of her life with Rhett's. They found a beautiful craftsman home near the river, with a spacious yard and a detached studio that could serve as Aurora's private space when she was home from college. Elara, to everyone's surprise, became an enthusiastic participant in their house search, flying out from New York twice to view properties and offering opinions on everything from structural integrity to kitchen layouts. The master bathroom in that colonial was entirely inadequate, she declared after one particularly long day of viewings. And the closet space was laughable. You need something with more character, more permanence. When they finally settled on the craftsman, Elara nodded her approval. "It has good bones," she said, running her hand along the original woodwork. "It needs updating, of course, but it feels like a home where a family could put down roots." Rhett exchanged a glance with Vivian, both thinking the same thing. Elara Quinn, champion of corporate ambition, was now advocating for family roots. When Aurora returned from Tate Institute, tanned and bubbling with stories of her research experiences, she took the news of their plans with characteristic enthusiasm. "Finally," she exclaimed, flopping dramatically onto the couch. "I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you two in a room together to make this happen." "You're really okay with this?" Vivian asked, still slightly concerned despite Rhett's assurances. "It's a big change." Aurora sat up, her expression suddenly serious. "Mom, do you remember what I said to you in the hospital, right before my transplant? When I was really scared?" Vivian nodded, her throat tightening at the memory. Aurora had been so pale, so fragile, facing a procedure with no guarantees of success. "I told you that if anything happened to me, I didn't want you to be alone," Aurora continued. "That my biggest regret would be leaving you without anyone to love you the way you deserved." "I remember," Vivian whispered. "Well, I meant it. And now, I don't have to worry anymore." Aurora's smile was radiant as she looked between her parents. "You found each other. Again. That's all I've ever wanted." Rhett, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, cleared his throat. "There's something else we wanted to discuss with you." he said, his voice slightly unsteady. Something important. Aurora looked at him expectantly.
You're getting married?
Not yet, Vivienne replied with a laugh. One step at a time. It's about the company. Rhett explained. Aurora Innovations. Aurora's brow furrowed in confusion. What about it? Rhett took a deep breath. When I started the company, I named it after my grandmother, or at least that's what I told myself. But the truth is, I think some part of me was holding on to the idea of the child I thought I'd lost. The future I'd walked away from. He reached for Vivienne's hand, drawing strength from her presence. Now that I've found you both again, I want to make it official. I'm establishing the Aurora Brooks Arden Foundation, funded by 20% of the company's annual profits. It will support research into pediatric cancers and provide financial assistance to families facing medical crises. Aurora's eyes widened. You're naming a foundation after me? If that's okay with you, Rhett said, suddenly uncertain. I should have asked first. His words were cut off as Aurora launched herself into his arms, nearly knocking him off balance. It's more than okay, she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. It's perfect. Over Aurora's head, Rhett's eyes met Vivienne's, shining with unshed tears. In that moment, Vivienne felt the last pieces of her heart, the parts she'd kept carefully guarded for so long, finally heal. 1 year later, on a perfect summer evening, Vivienne stood in the garden of their new home, surrounded by friends and family. The space had been transformed with twinkling lights and flowers, creating an intimate setting for the small gathering. Aurora, resplendent in a flowing blue dress that matched her eyes, stood beside her, adjusting the simple wreath of wildflowers in Vivienne's hair. You look beautiful, Mom, she said softly. Dad's going to cry when he sees you. Vivienne smiled, touching the delicate silver key pendant that Rhett had given her on their first weekend at the beach house. Probably. He's become quite sentimental in his old age. Aurora laughed. 45 is hardly old. And anyway, I think he's always been sentimental. He just didn't let himself show it before. From the garden came the soft strains of a string quartet beginning to play their cue that it was time. Ready? Aurora asked, offering her arm. Vivienne took a deep breath, smoothing the skirt of her simple ivory dress. Ready. Together they stepped into the garden, where Rhett waited beneath an arch of roses. His face, when he saw her, confirmed Aurora's prediction. His eyes immediately welled with tears, though his smile was radiant. As Vivienne reached him, taking his outstretched hands, she felt a sense of completion that transcended the moment. Their journey had been long and winding, marked by mistakes and regrets, but also by growth, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. Dearly beloved, the officiant began. We are gathered here today to celebrate the union of two souls who have found their way back to each other against all odds. Rhett squeezed her hands gently, his eyes never leaving hers. I love you, he mouthed silently. I love you too, Vivienne replied, her heart full to bursting. In the front row, Alara sat beside Aurora, elegant as always in a pale blue suit, but softer somehow, her usual sharp edges smoothed by time and reconciliation. She caught Vivienne's eye and gave a small nod of approval, a gesture that would have seemed impossible just a year ago, as they exchanged their vows beneath the summer sky. With Aurora beaming beside them, Vivienne knew that some stories don't end when you think they do. Sometimes they take unexpected turns, leading you back to where you were always meant to be. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they lead you home. If you believe in the power of second chances and that it's never too late to rebuild what was broken, hit that like button now. Only those with hearts unwilling to forgive or grow would scroll past without showing support. Comment, second chances, if this story touched your heart and reminded you that sometimes the longest road leads exactly where you're meant to be. The reception that followed was intimate and joyful, with laughter and music filling the garden as twilight deepened into night. Aurora had insisted on making a speech, standing with confident poise as she addressed the gathered guests. When I was little, she began, her voice clear in the evening air, I used to make up stories about my father. In my imagination, he was an astronaut or deep-sea explorer, or sometimes a secret agent on an important mission that kept him away from us. A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the audience. Rhett's hand tightened around Vivienne's as they listened from their place at the head table. As I got older, Aurora continued, those stories faded, replaced by the simple understanding that he wasn't part of our lives. I stopped asking questions, stopped wondering. And then, when I got sick, her voice caught slightly, but she pressed on. Everything changed. My mother, who had always been my rock, my entire world, made the bravest decision of her life. She reached out to the man she had every reason to resent, asking for help, not for herself, but for me. Aurora turned to look directly at her parents, her eyes shining with emotion. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Not just that my father's bone marrow was a perfect match, or that the transplant was successful. The real miracle was watching two people who had been hurt and separated by circumstance find their way back to each other, one careful step at a time. She raised her glass in a toast. To my parents, who taught me that it's never too late for second chances, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, and that sometimes the most beautiful endings come after the hardest beginnings. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as glasses were raised in response. Rhett stood, embracing his daughter with fierce tenderness, before turning to address the guests himself. 15 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life, he said simply. I chose ambition over love, success over family. I told myself it was the right decision, that I wasn't ready for the responsibility of parenthood, that Vivienne and our child would be better off without me. He shook his head, regret and wonder mingling in his expression. I was wrong, so profoundly, catastrophically wrong. And yet, through some miracle I still don't fully understand, I've been given a second chance. A chance to know my incredible daughter. He smiled at Aurora. And to rebuild a relationship with the only woman I've ever truly loved. Rhett turned to Vivienne, taking her hand. Viv, you had every right to slam the door in my face when I reappeared in your life. Instead, you showed me a grace and forgiveness I didn't deserve. You allowed me to become part of Aurora's life, and eventually, part of yours again. I promised to spend every day of our future together, trying to be worthy of that gift. As the evening progressed, Vivienne found herself drawn into a quiet conversation with Elara, who had watched the proceedings with uncharacteristic emotion. You've done something remarkable, Elara said, her voice soft. You've healed my son in ways I never could. We've healed each other, Vivienne corrected gently. All of us, including you. Elara smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her austere features. Perhaps. I've been thinking a great deal about the choices I made, the values I instilled in Rhett. After his father died, I was so determined that he would never experience the financial insecurity that marked my own childhood. I pushed him to prioritize success above all else, believing I was protecting him. She shook her head. Instead, I nearly cost him everything that truly matters. But you didn't, Vivienne reminded her. In the end, you supported his choices, even when they went against everything you'd taught him. It wasn't easy, Elara admitted. Old habits die hard, as they say. But seeing him with Aurora, with you, I couldn't deny the change in him. He's happier now than I've ever seen him. More fulfilled, more at peace. That's what love does, Vivienne said simply. It brings us home to ourselves. Elara nodded thoughtfully. Indeed it does. As the reception wound down, Vivienne found herself standing at the edge of the garden, taking a moment of quiet reflection amidst the celebration. Rhett joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. Happy? He asked softly. Beyond words, she replied, leaning into his embrace. Though I keep thinking about how different things might have been if we'd made different choices all those years ago. Rhett was quiet for a moment, considering her words. I used to torture myself with those thoughts, he admitted. All the birthdays I missed, the milestones, the everyday moments that make up a life. But lately, I've been thinking that perhaps this was how our story needed to unfold. Vivienne looked up at him, surprised. What do you mean? The man I was at 25 wouldn't have been a good father or husband, Rhett explained. I was selfish, driven by ambition, convinced that success was measured in achievements and acquisitions. I needed to learn some hard lessons, to experience the emptiness of success without meaning. He turned to face her fully, his hands gentle on her shoulders. And you, Viv, you became so much stronger, so much more confident than the young woman I knew. Raising Aurora on your own, building your career, creating a life filled with purpose and love. Would that have happened if we'd stayed together? Vivienne considered this perspective, finding an unexpected comfort in it. So, you're saying the universe knew what it was doing all along? Rhett smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling in the way she'd always loved. I'm saying that sometimes the longest road leads exactly where you're meant to be. And I wouldn't change a single step of our journey if it meant not standing here with you tonight as your husband. The word husband sent a pleasant shiver through Vivienne. After so many years of being on her own, of making every decision and bearing every burden alone, the idea of true partnership still felt like a precious gift. Well, in that case, she said, rising on tiptoe to kiss him, I suppose I can forgive the universe for its rather convoluted approach to our happily ever after. Their honeymoon was a 2-week sailing trip along the coast of Greece, Aurora having insisted she was perfectly capable of staying on her own in their absence. I'm almost 18, for heaven's sake, she'd argued. And grandmother Alara is staying in town. I'll be fine. The time alone together was healing in ways Vivienne hadn't anticipated. Away from the demands of work and daily life, she and Rhett rediscovered each other, sharing stories from their years apart, dreams for their future together, and the simple joy of uninterrupted companionship. On their last night aboard the yacht, anchored in a secluded cove near Santorini, they lay on deck beneath a canopy of stars. The gentle rocking of the boat, lulling them into a peaceful silence. I've been thinking about what's next, Rhett said, his voice quiet against the backdrop of lapping waves. After Aurora goes to college next year. Vivienne turned her head to look at him, his profile illuminated by moonlight. What are you thinking? I'm considering stepping back from day-to-day operations at Aurora Innovations, he replied, promoting Celia to CEO and taking on more of an advisory role. Vivienne sat up, surprised by this revelation. Rhett's company had been the center of his life for so long, his identity inextricably linked with its success. Are you sure? You've worked so hard to build it. Rhett nodded, reaching for her hand. That's just it. I've already built it. The company is stable, profitable, making a positive impact in the world. And I've realized something important in these past 2 years. I don't want to miss any more moments. Not with you, not with Aurora, not with whatever the future holds for our family. Our family, Vivienne repeated softly, the words filling her with warmth. I like the sound of that. Rhett hesitated, then added, I've also been thinking about expanding that family. If you're open to the idea. Vivienne's heart skipped a beat. You mean adoption? Rhett clarified. There are so many children who need homes, who deserve the kind of love and stability we can provide. I know we're older than typical first-time parents, but… Yes, Vivienne interrupted, her decision immediate and certain. I've always wanted more children. After Aurora was born, I thought about adoption. But the timing never seemed right. The resources too limited. Rhett's smile was radiant in the moonlight. Really? You'd want to start that journey with me? I can't think of anything I'd want more, Vivienne replied honestly, except perhaps grandchildren. But I think Aurora might object if we start pressuring her about that just yet. Rhett laughed, pulling her close. One step at a time, then. First, we enjoy our last year with Aurora before college. Then, we start the adoption process. And somewhere in there, you transition to a less demanding role at work, and I continue developing the advanced science curriculum. Vivienne added, mentally mapping out their future. Exactly, Rhett agreed. A new chapter for both of us. Together. Have you ever felt that moment when your future suddenly expands with new possibilities? When dreams you'd set aside suddenly seem within reach again? Comment Dreams Reborn if you've experienced that beautiful feeling of hope being rekindled. As they sailed back to Athens the next day, Vivienne found herself reflecting on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. 2 years ago, she had been a single mother facing her child's potentially terminal illness, desperate enough to reach out to the man who had abandoned them both. Now, she was returning from her honeymoon, married to that same man, planning an expanded family and a shared future that once would have seemed impossible. Life, she realized, was far more unpredictable and far more generous than she had ever imagined. When they returned home, they found Aurora, waiting with news of her own. She'd been offered early admission to Blair University's marine biology program, with a full scholarship. "Blair!" Red exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "That's incredible, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." "We both are," Vivienne added, joining the embrace. "Though I'm not sure my heart is ready for you to be so far away." Aurora rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "Mom, California is a 2-hour flight. And anyway, you two will be so busy with your own lives, you'll hardly notice I'm gone." "Not possible," Red assured her. "We'll notice every minute." Later that evening, after Aurora had gone to meet friends for a celebratory dinner, Vivienne found Rhett in his home office, staring thoughtfully at his computer screen. "What are you working on?" she asked, coming to stand behind him. "Just looking at some properties," he replied, scrolling through listings. "Near Blair." Vivienne leaned closer, surprised. "You're thinking of buying a place in California?" Rhett nodded, a slightly sheepish expression crossing his face. "Just a small house or condo, somewhere Aurora could live during her studies, and where we could stay when we visit, which I imagine will be often." Vivienne laughed, shaking her head in amazement. "You really are all in on this father thing, aren't you?" "Trying to make up for lost time," Red admitted. "Too much?" "Not at all," Vivienne assured him, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. "It's one of the things I love most about you, your wholehearted commitment, once you decide on a course of action." Rhett caught her hand, drawing her around to face him. "I should have been this committed 15 years ago. We've agreed not to dwell on regrets, remember?" Vivienne reminded him gently. "Besides, I'm not sure the Rhett of 15 years ago could have afforded a house in California." This drew a laugh from him, breaking the moment of melancholy. Fair point. Silicon Valley real estate was expensive, even then. As autumn turned to winter, and winter to spring, their plans for the future took more concrete shape. Aurora, thriving in her final year of high school, had become an enthusiastic supporter of their adoption plans, offering suggestions for bedroom decorations and volunteering to help with the home study process. "I always wanted siblings," she declared one evening as they discussed the possibility of adopting siblings rather than a single child. "And now I get to be the cool older sister who comes home from college with stories and presents, and who might occasionally babysit," Vivienne suggested hopefully. "Absolutely," Aurora agreed with a grin. "For a reasonable fee, of course." Rhett, true to his word, had begun the process of stepping back from Aurora Innovations, promoting his longtime COO Celia Vaughn to the position of CEO while retaining his role as chairman of the board. The transition had been smoother than anticipated, freeing him to focus on the foundation named for his daughter and their growing family plans. Elara, to everyone's continued surprise, had become an unexpected ally in their adoption journey. She had connections with several international adoption agencies through her charitable work and offered to help navigate the often complex process. "I've been supporting an orphanage in Vietnam for years," she explained during one of her now regular visits to Portland. "The children there receive excellent care, but what they really need are permanent families. If you're serious about adopting siblings, I could make some inquiries." On a crisp spring morning, just weeks before Aurora's high school graduation, they received the call they'd been waiting for. Their adoption application had been approved, and a social worker wanted to discuss a potential match: twin boys, age 4, who had been in foster care since infancy. "Twins," Vivienne breathed after ending the call, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "2 4-year-old boys, Rhett. Are we ready for that?" Rhett's smile was equal parts terrified and elated. "Absolutely not," he admitted. "But then, is anyone ever truly ready for parenthood? We certainly weren't the first time around." "And yet, look how well that turned out," Vivienne replied, thinking of their brilliant, compassionate daughter preparing to embark on her college journey. Exactly, Rhett agreed, pulling her into a reassuring embrace. We'll figure it out together, just like we've figured everything else out. When they shared the news with Aurora that evening, her reaction was everything they could have hoped for. Brothers, she exclaimed, clapping her hands in delight. 2 of them. When can we meet them? What are their names? Do they like the ocean? I could teach them about marine life when I'm home from college. Slow down, Vivienne laughed, charmed by her daughter's enthusiasm. We're meeting them next week. Their names are Cruz and Rowan, and we don't know much about their interests yet, but I'm sure they'd love to learn about the ocean from their big sister. Aurora's expression softened, growing serious. They're really lucky, you know, to have you 2 as parents, to have a family that wants them so much. We're the lucky ones, Rhett corrected gently, to have the chance to love them, to watch them grow, just as we've been lucky with you. As Aurora hugged them both, Vivienne felt a profound sense of completion. Their family circle, once broken, had not only been repaired, but was expanding in ways she could never have imagined when she'd stood outside Aurora Innovations 2 years ago, gathering her courage to confront the man who had walked away. Life had a way of coming full circle, she reflected. Not always in the ways you expected, and rarely according to your carefully laid plans. But sometimes, if you were brave enough to take risks, to open your heart to possibilities, it offered second chances more beautiful than anything you could have designed for yourself. The day they met, Cruz and Rowan changed everything. Vivienne had thought herself prepared. She'd raised Aurora, after all, and had years of experience working with children as a teacher. But nothing could have readied her for the moment the social worker ushered 2 small boys into the visitation room, their identical faces solemn and wary, their hands clutching matching stuffed dinosaurs. Cruz and Rowan, Miss Tessa, their caseworker, said gently, "These are the people I told you about. Mr. and Mrs. Arden would like to get to know you." The boys stood frozen, dark eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They were small for 4, with copper-brown skin and curly black hair, dressed in clean but mismatched clothes that spoke of well-intentioned but hurried care. Rhett, to Vivienne's surprise, was the first to move. He knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level, his expression warm and open. "Hello," he said softly. "I'm Rhett. This is Vivienne. We brought some toys and books, if you'd like to play." The boys exchanged a quick glance, some silent communication passing between them. Then, the one Miss Tessa had identified as Cruz took a small step forward. "What toys?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rhett smiled, gesturing to the bag they'd brought. "Let's see what we have, shall we?" That first meeting lasted an hour of cautious interaction, of building the fragile beginnings of trust. The boys gradually warmed to them, especially when Vivienne produced a picture book about ocean creatures that captured their attention. "My daughter Aurora studies ocean animals," she explained as they pored over illustrations of colorful fish and mysterious deep-sea creatures. "She's going to college soon to learn even more about them." "You have a daughter?" Rowan asked, speaking directly to them for the first time. "We do," Rhett replied. "She's 17, much older than you, but she's very excited about the possibility of having brothers." The twins exchanged another of their mysterious looks. "We're already brothers," Cruz said firmly. "Of course you are," Vivienne assured him quickly. "And you always will be." As they prepared to leave, promising to return in 2 days, Rowan suddenly reached out and touched Vivienne's hand. "Will you bring more books next time?" he asked, his dark eyes serious. "About the ocean?" "Absolutely," Vivienne promised, her heart melting at this small gesture of connection. In the car afterward, she and Rhett sat in silence for several minutes, processing the emotional weight of the meeting. "They're so small," Rhett finally said, his voice rough with emotion. "So vulnerable." Vivienne nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Despite the clinical descriptions in their file developmental delays due to early neglect, attachment issues, speech therapy needs, nothing had prepared them for the reality of 2 small boys, carrying the weight of too much loss, too much uncertainty. "They need us," she said simply. Rhett reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. And we need them. I didn't realize how much until just now. If you believe every child deserves a loving family, hit that like button now. Only those with hearts as cold as stone would scroll past without showing support for children like Cruz and Rowan. Comment, family is what we make it if you believe that love, not blood, is what truly defines a family. Over the next few weeks, they established a routine of visits, each one lasting a little longer, each one building more comfort and trust. They learned that Cruz was the more verbal of the twins, often speaking for both of them, while Rowan was more physically demonstrative, gradually working up to sitting beside them during story time, eventually leaning against Vivian's arm as she read. They discovered that both boys loved dinosaurs, could spend hours with building blocks, and had never been to a zoo or an aquarium. They learned that Cruz had nightmares and Rowan was a picky eater, that both were fiercely protective of each other, and that their greatest fear seemed to be separation. We stay together, Cruz insisted during one visit, after Miss Tessa mentioned that the boys were doing well in their pre-kindergarten program. Always. Always, Rhett agreed solemnly. Brothers belong together. Aurora, home from a campus visit to Blair, insisted on meeting the twins before their next scheduled visit. I need to approve my future brothers, she declared. Only half joking. Miss Tessa made a special exception, arranging for Aurora to join them at the park where they often met the boys for outdoor playtime. Vivian watched nervously as her daughter approached the playground where Cruz and Rowan were cautiously exploring the slide. Hi there, Aurora said, crouching down near them, but not too close. I'm Aurora. I hear you guys like dinosaurs. The twins regarded her with their usual initial wariness, but Aurora was undeterred. From her backpack, she produced two identical plush creatures. These are marine dinosaurs called plesiosaurs. They lived in the ocean a very long time ago. Rowan's eyes widened. Dinosaurs in the ocean? Absolutely, Aurora confirmed. Some of the coolest dinosaurs lived underwater. Would you like to learn about them? By the end of the visit, both boys were trailing after Aurora like ducklings, listening in rapt attention as she described ancient marine creatures, demonstrating how they might have swum using the plush toys. You're hired, Rhett told her with a grin, as they watched the twins reluctantly say goodbye to their new friend. Aurora rolled her eyes, but her expression was soft as she watched the boys climb into their foster mother's car, turning to wave at her through the window. They're amazing, she said quietly. A little broken, maybe. But amazing. Broken? Vivian echoed, surprised by her daughter's assessment. Aurora shrugged. Not in a bad way. Just, they've been through a lot. You can see it in their eyes. They're cautious, like they're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. She glanced at her parents. But you guys can help with that. You're pretty good at healing broken things. The day they brought the twins home for good coincided with Aurora's high school graduation. It hadn't been planned that way. The adoption process had its own timeline, bureaucratic wheels turning at their own pace. But there was something fitting about welcoming new family members on the day they celebrated Aurora's milestone. The boys were subdued as they entered the house, clutching their small backpacks containing the sum total of their possessions. Vivian had prepared their room with painstaking care: twin beds with dinosaur-patterned comforters, a bookshelf filled with picture books, a toy chest overflowing with carefully selected games and puzzles. "This is all for us?" Cruz asked, his voice hushed with disbelief as they stood in the doorway of the bedroom. "All for you," Rhett confirmed. "This is your home now. For always." Rowan moved cautiously to one of the beds, touching the soft blanket with tentative fingers. "Which one is mine?" "Whichever one you want," Vivian told him. "You can choose." The concept of choice seemed to overwhelm the boys momentarily. They stood frozen until Aurora appeared in the doorway, resplendent in her graduation cap and gown. "Hey, little brothers," she said cheerfully. "Want to help me celebrate? Mom made chocolate cake." The mention of cake broke the tension, and soon they were all in the kitchen, the twins perched on booster seats at the table, Aurora cutting generous slices of cake while regaling them with stories of her graduation ceremony. "And then," she told them, her eyes twinkling, "my friend Tessa's cap flew off right in the middle of the principal's speech. It landed in the fountain." The boys giggled. chocolate frosting smeared across their faces, their earlier anxiety temporarily forgotten in the warmth of family celebration. That night, after Aurora had left for her graduation party and the twins were finally asleep after multiple stories, glasses of water, and reassurances that yes, they would still be there in the morning, Vivienne and Rhett collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally drained, but deeply content. "We did it," Vivienne murmured, leaning against Rhett's shoulder. "We're officially a family of 5. 5, Rhett repeated, wonder in his voice. "If someone had told me 3 years ago that I'd be sitting here with you, with 3 incredible children, I would have thought they were delusional." Vivienne smiled, thinking of how far they'd come. Life has a way of surprising you. "Speaking of surprises," Rhett said, reaching into his pocket, "I have something for you. A congratulations on becoming a mother of twins gift." He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with 5 small birthstones arranged in a circle. "One for each of us," Rhett explained as Vivienne examined it with misty eyes. "Aurora's in July, the twins in October, yours in April, mine in December. Our family constellation." Vivienne felt tears well up as he fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." The first few months with the twins were a whirlwind of adjustment and discovery. There were triumphs the first time Rowan spontaneously reached for Rhett's hand during a walk. The afternoon Cruz fell asleep in Vivienne's lap during story time. The day both boys ran to the door shouting, "Aurora," when she came home for a weekend visit from college. There were challenges too, nightmares that left the boys inconsolable. Meltdowns triggered by seemingly innocuous changes in routine. Moments of testing boundaries to see if rejection would follow. Through it all, Vivienne and Rhett remained steady, their commitment to their new sons unwavering. "They're healing," Dr. Parker, the child psychologist who worked with the twins, assured them during a check-in session. "It takes time to rebuild trust, to believe in permanence, when all they've known is disruption. But they're making remarkable progress." By the time the twins started kindergarten that fall, the transformation was evident. They still had their struggles. Rowan's separation anxiety flared up on the first day of school, and Cruz still occasionally retreated into stubborn silence when overwhelmed. But they were increasingly secure, increasingly able to believe in the stability of their new life. Aurora, thriving in her first semester at Blair, FaceTimed regularly, her dorm room walls plastered with the twins' artwork. She had become their hero, their window into a world of scientific wonders, their proof that being part of this family meant being loved even from a distance. "When are you coming home?" Rowan would ask during every call, counting down the days until Thanksgiving break on the calendar in the kitchen. "Soon, buddy," Aurora would promise. "And wait until you see what I'm bringing you from the aquarium here." One evening in late October, as they prepared for the twins' 5th birthday celebration, Vivienne found Rhett in the boys' room, watching them sleep. The twins had gradually migrated from their separate beds to sharing one, their small bodies curled toward each other even in slumber. "Everything okay?" she asked softly, coming to stand beside him. Rhett nodded, his expression contemplative. "I was just thinking about how different their lives might have been. How different all our lives might have been if you hadn't found the courage to come to my office that day." Vivienne leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I was terrified," she admitted. "I almost turned back a dozen times." "But you didn't," Rhett said, his arm slipping around her waist. "You were brave enough to take that chance, to believe that people can change, that broken things can be mended." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the gentle rise and fall of their sons' chests, the peaceful expressions on faces that had once been guarded and wary. "We should let them sleep," Vivienne whispered eventually. "Big day tomorrow." As they turned to leave, Rowan stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" he murmured sleepily. Rhett moved immediately to the bedside, crouching down. "I'm here, buddy. Go back to sleep." Rowan reached out a small hand, patting Rhett's cheek in a gesture of drowsy affection. "Love you, Daddy," he mumbled before drifting back to sleep. In the hallway, Vivienne saw the sheen of tears in Rhett's eyes. First time he said that, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Vivienne squeezed his hand, understanding the magnitude of the moment. The first of many, she assured him. The twins' birthday party the next day was a joyful chaos of kindergarten classmates, dinosaur-themed decorations, and enough cake to feed a small army. Aurora had flown home for the weekend, bearing gifts from California and stories of ocean research that captivated her brothers. Ilara arrived midway through the party, looking slightly out of place among the running, shouting "children," but making a valiant effort to engage. She had brought the twins matching child-sized lab coats with their names embroidered on the pockets. Every scientist needs proper equipment, she explained as they unwrapped her gift. Aurora tells me you're interested in marine biology, like her. We're going to discover new fish, Cruz declared, immediately putting on his lab coat. And save the oceans, Rowan added solemnly, struggling with the buttons on his. Ilara knelt down, surprising everyone by helping Rowan with his buttons. Well then, these are definitely necessary. Can't have proper ocean scientists without lab coats. As Vivienne watched her family Rhett helping the twins blow out their candles, Aurora documenting everything with her camera. Even Ilara joining in the celebration, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. 3 years ago, she had been a single mother facing her child's illness, desperate and afraid. Now she stood at the center of a family that had been forged through pain and separation, but also through courage, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. Later that evening, after the last guest had departed, and the twins had finally succumbed to the exhaustion of excitement, the 4 adults, Vivienne, Rhett, Aurora, and Ilara, sat on the back porch, enjoying the peaceful aftermath. I have news, Aurora announced, setting down her glass of lemonade. I've been accepted into the research program in Australia next summer. The one connected to the Marine Biology Conference. That's wonderful, Vivienne exclaimed, though her heart gave a small twinge at the thought of her daughter so far away. We're so proud of you. Absolutely, Rhett agreed. Though the twins will miss their weekly science lessons via FaceTime. Aurora grinned. Actually, that's the other part of my news. The program runs for 8 weeks, and afterward, I've been invited to join a research vessel for a 3-month expedition in the South Pacific. 3 months? Ilara echoed, her eyebrows rising. That's quite an adventure. Aurora nodded, her expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It's an incredible opportunity. We'll be studying coral reef ecosystems, documenting the effects of climate change, collecting data that could help with conservation efforts. You have to go, Vivienne said firmly, pushing aside her maternal anxiety. This is exactly the kind of experience you've been working toward. What about the fall semester? Rhett asked practically. Will you defer? Aurora shook her head. The expedition ends just before classes start. It'll be tight, but I can make it work. She hesitated, then added, but I was thinking, maybe you could all come to Australia before the expedition starts? We could have a family vacation, and then you could see the research facility before I head out to sea. Australia. Rowan's small voice came from the doorway, where he stood in his dinosaur pajamas, clearly having escaped from bed. We're going to Australia? Aurora laughed, opening her arms as her little brother ran to climb into her lap. Would you like that, Ro? Australia has some of the coolest animals in the world. And dinosaur bones? He asked hopefully. Some of the best dinosaur museums anywhere, Aurora confirmed. Plus, kangaroos and koalas, and the Great Barrier Reef. Rowan's eyes widened. Can Cruz come too? Of course, Rhett assured him, rising to scoop up his son. The whole family. But right now, young man, you should be in bed. As Rhett carried Rowan back inside, Ilara turned to Vivienne with a knowing smile. You've created something remarkable here, she said softly. A family that extends across continents, across oceans. Vivienne nodded, watching as Aurora scrolled through pictures on her phone, showing her grandmother images of the Australian research facility. Not exactly the life I imagined when I was changing diapers and grading papers at midnight, she admitted, but better. So much better. If you've ever witnessed the beautiful chaos of a blended family coming together, hit that like button now. Only those who've never experienced the joy of seeing broken pieces form something new and whole would scroll past without acknowledging this miracle. Comment: Family Reimagined. If you believe in the power of love to create family bonds that transcend biology. The family trip to Australia the following summer became a cornerstone memory, a time when all the pieces of their unconventional family aligned in perfect harmony. The twins, now 5.5, and bursting with curiosity, were enchanted by everything. The long flight, their first, the strange accents, the exotic animals, and most of all, the chance to see their big sister in her element. Aurora, confident and passionate as she showed them around the marine research facility, had blossomed into a young woman who moved through the world with purpose and joy. Watching her explain complex marine ecosystems to her rapt brothers, using language they could understand without talking down to them, Vivienne felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "She's amazing," Rhett murmured, standing beside her as Aurora helped the twins peer into a touch tank containing starfish and sea urchins. "We made an incredible human being." "We did," Vivienne agreed, leaning against him. "And now we're making 2 more." Even Alara, who had joined them for the first week of their trip, seemed transformed by the experience, shedding her usual formality to wade into tide pools with the twins. Her designer pants rolled up to her knees, her silver hair blowing in the ocean breeze. "Grandmother, look!" Cruz called, holding up a small crab. "It's a decorator crab. It puts stuff on its shell to hide from predators." "Remarkable," Ilara replied, genuinely interested. Nature's own camouflage expert. The day Aurora boarded the research vessel was emotional for all of them. The twins, finally understanding that their sister would be at sea for 3 months, with limited communication, clung to her with unusual ferocity. "You'll come back?" Cruz asked, his voice small and uncertain. "Always," Aurora promised, kneeling to embrace both boys. "I'll always come back to you guys, and I'll send messages whenever I can, with pictures of all the amazing sea creatures I find. And when I get home, we'll have so many new things to learn about together." Rowan nodded solemnly against her shoulder. "We'll take care of Mom and Dad while you're gone." Aurora laughed, ruffling his curly hair. "I know you will, buddy. They're in good hands with you two." The goodbye with her parents was equally emotional, though tempered by their pride in her accomplishments. "Be safe," Vivienne whispered, holding her daughter tightly. "And remember, no matter how far you go, you always have a home to come back to." "I know, Mom," Aurora replied, her voice thick with emotion. "That's what gives me the courage to go." Rhett's embrace was fierce and protective. "My brave, brilliant girl," he murmured. "You're going to change the world." As they watched the research vessel depart, the twins waving frantically until it disappeared from view, Vivienne felt Rhett's arm tighten around her waist. "She'll be fine," he said, as much to reassure himself as her. "Better than fine," Vivienne agreed. "She'll be extraordinary." The 3 months of Aurora's expedition passed in a blur of activity. The twins started first grade, throwing themselves into learning with enthusiasm that delighted their teachers. Rhett continued his gradual transition away from day-to-day operations at Aurora Innovations, focusing more on the foundation's work and spending afternoons volunteering in the boys' classroom. Vivienne's curriculum development project was implemented across the district, earning recognition from the State Education Board. Aurora's messages, when they came through the expedition's satellite system, were treasured events. The whole family would gather around the computer, eagerly absorbing her stories of bioluminescent creatures in the deep ocean, coral reefs teeming with life, and the camaraderie of scientists united in their mission to understand and protect marine ecosystems. "She looks happy," Vivienne observed after one such call, as she and Rhett prepared dinner together. "Fulfilled." Rhett nodded, his expression thoughtful as he chopped vegetables. "She's found her purpose. There's no greater gift we could have given her. Except perhaps the bone marrow that saved her life," Vivienne reminded him with a gentle smile. Rhett shook his head. "That was biology. What I'm talking about is something deeper. The confidence to pursue her dreams. The knowledge that she's loved unconditionally. The security of knowing she always has a home to return to. That's what you gave her, Viv. Long before I came back into the picture." Vivienne paused in her dinner preparations, touched by his words. We both contributed to who she is. Your DNA, yes, but also your determination, your intellectual curiosity, your capacity for growth and change. She gets those qualities from you. And from you, Red insisted. Your resilience, your compassion, your ability to see the best in people, even people who don't deserve it. Their conversation was interrupted by the twins bursting into the kitchen, eager to show off the ocean dioramas they'd created for their science project, a direct result of Aurora's influence on their developing interests. "Look, Mom," Cruz exclaimed, holding up a shoebox transformed into an underwater scene. "I made a coral reef with the endangered species Aurora told us about. And mine is the deep ocean," Rowan added, proudly displaying his creation with its black background and glow-in-the-dark creatures, with the fish that make their own light. As they examined each diorama with appropriate enthusiasm, praising the boys' creativity and scientific accuracy, Vivienne caught Rhett's eye over their sons' heads. The look they exchanged was one of shared joy, of gratitude for this life they'd built together, a life neither could have imagined 3 years ago. Aurora's return from her expedition coincided with the twins' winter break from school. The entire family gathered at the airport. The boys holding a welcome home sign they decorated with marine creatures. And glitter. Lots of glitter. Despite Rhett's attempts to limit its use. When Aurora emerged from the arrivals gate, tanned and lean from months at sea, her face lit up at the sight of her family. The twins broke free, racing toward their sister, with shouts of excitement. She dropped her backpack just in time to catch them both in a fierce hug, lifting them off their feet despite their growth over the past months. "My favorite scientists," she exclaimed, planting kisses on their cheeks. "I've missed you so much." The reunion was joyful chaos, with everyone talking at once as they made their way home. Aurora, despite evident exhaustion from her long journey, was animated as she described the expedition's discoveries, the friendships she'd formed, and the paper she was co-authoring based on their research. That evening, after the twins had finally been persuaded to go to bed, with Aurora promising to continue her stories in the morning, the 3 adults sat in the living room, sharing a bottle of wine and the comfortable silence of family reunited. "I have something to tell you both," Aurora said eventually, setting down her glass. "Something important." Vivienne felt a flutter of maternal concern. "Is everything okay?" "More than okay," Aurora assured her with a smile. "I've been offered a position with the International Marine Conservation Initiative after I graduate. It would mean splitting my time between field research and their headquarters in Sydney." "Sydney?" Rhett repeated. "As in Australia?" Aurora nodded, watching their reactions carefully. "It's an incredible opportunity, the kind that doesn't come along often, especially for someone just finishing undergraduate studies." "It sounds perfect for you," Vivienne said, pushing aside her instinctive sadness at the thought of her daughter living so far away. "Your work on the expedition must have really impressed them. They said it was my research on bioluminescent algae adaptation that initially caught their attention," Aurora explained. "The paper I published in high school, remember? And then the expedition confirmed I could handle field work." "We're so proud of you," Rhett said, his voice warm with genuine admiration. "Though I admit, selfishly, I was hoping you might consider graduate work somewhere closer to home." Aurora's expression softened. "I know it's far, and I haven't decided for certain yet, but I wanted to be honest with you both about the opportunity." "We appreciate that," Vivienne assured her. "And whatever you decide, we'll support you completely. That's what parents do. They give their children roots and wings." Later that night, after Aurora had gone to bed, Vivienne found Rhett on the back porch, gazing up at the winter sky. "You're worried about her being so far away," she said, joining him on the porch swing. Rhett sighed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to me," Vivienne replied with a small smile. "And it's understandable. You've had less time with her than I have." "It's not just that," Rhett admitted. "I worry about her being alone on the other side of the world, about not being able to reach her if she needs us." "She won't be alone," Vivienne reminded him gently. "She'll have colleagues, friends. And she's proven she can handle herself in challenging situations." "I know," Rhett agreed. "Logically, I know all that, but emotionally, he trailed off, shaking his head. Emotionally, you're her father, and you want to protect her. Vivienne finished for him. I understand. I feel it too. But part of loving our children is letting them follow their own paths, even when those paths take them far from us. Rhett was quiet for a moment, considering her words. When did you get so wise about parenting? He asked finally, a hint of humor returning to his voice. Around the time I found myself raising a teenager on my own, Vivienne replied dryly. Nothing accelerates wisdom quite like necessity. Rhett laughed, pulling her closer. Well, I'm grateful for your wisdom and for your patience with my learning curve. You're doing pretty well for someone who started parenting with teenagers and preschoolers, Vivienne assured him. No gradual breaking in period for you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the porch swing creaking gently beneath them, until Rhett spoke again. Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if I hadn't been such a coward 15 years ago? It was a question they rarely addressed directly, though it sometimes hovered in the background of their relationship, the ghost of what might have been. Sometimes, Vivienne admitted. But then I look at our life now, at the family we've created, and I can't imagine it any other way. Rhett nodded slowly. I think about it more often than I should. About all the moments I missed with Aurora, all the burdens you carried alone. But then I think about who we were back then, so young, so focused on our individual paths. Would we have made it? Would we have been good parents together? We'll never know, Vivienne said softly. But I believe everything happens for a reason, even the painful things. Maybe we needed those years apart to become the people who could build this life together. Rhett turned to face her, his expression serious in the dim porch light. I love you, Vivienne Brooksarden, more than I ever thought possible. And I promise you, I will spend every day of the rest of our lives trying to be worthy of the second chance you gave me. You already are, Vivienne assured him, leaning in to kiss him softly. Every single day. The Christmas holiday that year was a celebration of family, in all its complex, beautiful forms. Elara flew in from London, bringing her new companion, a distinguished literature professor she'd met at a charity event. Aurora's presence filled the house with energy and stories. The twins, now firmly established in their new life, reveled in the traditions they were building together, baking cookies, decorating the tree, singing carols, badly, but enthusiastically. On Christmas Eve, after the twins had finally fallen asleep, vibrating with excitement for the morning to come, the adults gathered in the living room, enjoying the peaceful glow of the tree lights. I've made a decision, Aurora announced, setting down her mug of hot chocolate. About the position in Sydney. Vivienne and Rhett exchanged a quick glance, both bracing themselves for what they suspected was coming. I'm going to accept it, Aurora continued, but with a modification. I've negotiated a split arrangement 6 months in the field. 6 months based at their new satellite office in San Francisco. San Francisco? Vivienne repeated, hope rising in her chest. That's only a short flight away. Aurora nodded, her smile widening at their obvious relief. Exactly. Close enough to come home regularly. To be part of the twins' lives as they grow up. To be present for family milestones. That sounds like the perfect compromise, Rhett said, his voice thick with emotion. But are you sure it's what you want? We would have supported you either way. Rhett, I know you would, Aurora assured him. And that's part of why I wanted to find a middle ground. My work is important to me, but so is my family. I don't want to miss watching the twins grow up or being part of your lives. She hesitated, then added with a mischievous smile. Besides, someone needs to make sure these two don't completely spoil my brother's rotten in my absence. Alara laughed, raising her glass in a toast. To family, she said warmly, in all its wonderful, messy, complicated glory. To family, they echoed. Glasses clinking in the soft light of Christmas Eve. Later, as they prepared for bed, Vivienne found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the desperate mother seeking help for her dying daughter, to the woman who now stood at the center of a family that spanned generations and continents. From the abandoned young graduate student to the wife and mother who had found the courage to forgive, to rebuild, to love again. "What are you thinking about?" Red asked, coming up behind her as she stood by the window, watching snow begin to fall. "Everything," Vivienne replied simply. "How far we've come. How much we have to be grateful for." Rhett wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I was thinking the same thing, about how close I came to missing all of this. How one moment of courage, yours, not mine, changed everything." Vivienne turned in his embrace, looking up into the face she had come to love again, differently, but more deeply than before. "That's the thing about life," she said softly. "Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful destinations." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a blanket of pristine white. Inside, wrapped in the warmth of family and love, Vivienne and Rhett stood together, grateful for second chances, for healing, for the unexpected journey that had brought them home, to each other. 5 years later, the Arden family gathered on the beach at sunset, the golden light casting a warm glow over their expanded circle. Aurora, now a respected marine biologist with several published papers to her name, stood beside her fiancé, Blair, a fellow scientist she'd met during her work in Australia. The twins, 10 years old and bursting with energy, chased waves at the water's edge, their laughter carrying on the ocean breeze. "Don't go too far out," Vivienne called, though she knew they were careful. Years of Aurora's influence had made them respectful of the ocean's power, even as they reveled in its wonders. "They're fine," Red assured her, his arm around her waist. "They swim better than I do." "That's not saying much," Vivienne teased, leaning into him. "You still look like a flailing octopus in the water." Rhett laughed, the lines around his eyes crinkling in the way she loved. At 50, his hair was more silver than dark now, but he carried it well, the distinguished look suiting his role as chairman of Aurora Innovations and president of their foundation, which had grown to support pediatric cancer research centers across the country. "Mom! Dad! Look what we found!" Cruz called, running up the beach with Rowan close behind. They held a large spiral shell between them, careful not to drop their treasure. "It's a chambered nautilus," Aurora explained, examining their find. "They're living fossils, practically unchanged for millions of years." "Can we keep it?" Rowan asked, his dark eyes hopeful. "It's empty," Aurora confirmed after a closer look. "So yes, but remember what I taught you about collecting from the beach. Take only memories. Leave only footprints," the twins recited in unison. "Except for trash. Always take trash. And one perfect shell occasionally," Blair added with a smile, ruffling Rowan's curly hair. As the twins ran off to show their shell to Alara, who was sitting under a beach umbrella with her companion, Professor Emerson, Vivienne felt a familiar surge of gratitude for the family they had built. "Penny for your thoughts," Rhett said, noticing her contemplative expression. "I was just thinking about that day at Aurora Innovations," Vivienne replied. "When I stood outside your building, terrified to go in, convinced you'd forgotten all about us, and instead, you discovered I'd named my company after our daughter," Rhett finished, "though I didn't know it at the time." "Life has a funny way of foreshadowing," Vivienne mused, "as if some part of you knew what you were missing, even before you consciously realized it." Aurora joined them, slipping her arm through her father's.
What are you two getting all nostalgic about?
"The beginning," Rhett said simply, "how we found our way back to each other." Aurora smiled, the setting sun highlighting the features she'd inherited from both of them. "You know, when I was little, and Mom would tell me stories about you, I used to imagine dramatic reunions, but I never could have imagined how it actually happened. None of us could have." Vivienne agreed. "That's the beauty of life. It surprises you in ways you could never anticipate." "Speaking of surprises," Aurora said, a mischievous glint in her eye, "Blair and I have one for you." Rhett raised an eyebrow. "You're not moving the wedding date again, are you? Your grandmother has already rearranged her entire schedule twice." "No. The wedding is still on for June," Aurora assured him. This is something else. Something additional. The additional. Vivienne felt her heart skip a beat as she recognized the particular glow on her daughter's face, the same one she'd seen in the mirror many years ago.
Aurora, are you having
Pregnant, Aurora confirmed, her smile radiant. Due in November. You're gonna be grandparents. Rhett's face went through a remarkable series of expressions: shock, joy, disbelief, and finally, overwhelming happiness. Without a word, he pulled Aurora into a fierce embrace, tears shining in his eyes. A baby, he whispered. Our family keeps growing. That's what families do, Vivienne said, joining the embrace. They evolve, they expand, they surprise you. If you believe in the power of second chances and that it's never too late to rebuild what was broken, hit that like button now. Only those with hearts unwilling to forgive or grow would scroll past without showing support. Comment second chances if this story touched your heart and reminded you that sometimes the longest road leads exactly where you're meant to be. As they stood together on the beach, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Vivienne thought about the long, winding path that had led them here. The pain and separation, the healing and reconciliation, the courage it had taken to reach out across 15 years of silence. Should we tell the twins they're going to be uncles? Rhett asked, watching as Cruz and Rowan built an elaborate sandcastle with Alara's surprisingly enthusiastic assistance. Let's wait until after dinner, Aurora suggested. Otherwise, we'll never get them to sit still long enough to eat. Later that night, after the twins had finally calmed down from the excitement of the baby news and gone to bed, though Vivienne suspected they were still awake, plotting all the things they would teach their future niece or nephew, the adults gathered on the deck of their beach house, watching the stars emerge over the ocean. I never imagined this, Alara admitted, sipping her tea. When Rhett told me about Aurora all those years ago, I was certain it would end in disaster. I was so afraid he would lose everything he'd worked for. Instead, he gained everything that matters, Professor Emerson observed, patting her hand affectionately. Alara nodded, her expression softening as she looked at her son. I was wrong about so many things. About what success really means. About what makes a life worth living. She turned to Vivienne. And especially about you, my dear. You were exactly what my son needed, even when I was too blind to see it. We all had our journeys to make, Vivienne said gently. Our lessons to learn. Some of us took longer than others, Alara acknowledged with a rueful smile. As the conversation flowed around them, Rhett leaned close to Vivienne, his voice for her ears alone. Happy? It was the question he still asked her sometimes, as if checking to make sure their life together was everything she'd hoped for. Beyond words, she replied. The answer always the same. Always true. You? Rhett looked around at their gathered family, Aurora and Blair, discussing baby names, Alara and Professor Emerson debating the merits of various children's literature, the twins' muffled giggles occasionally drifting down from upstairs. Then he turned back to Vivienne, the love of his life, the woman who had given him a second chance he hadn't deserved. I never knew it was possible to be this happy, he said simply. To be this complete. Vivienne leaned her head against his shoulder, content in the knowledge that their story, which had begun with separation and heartache, had transformed into something beautiful beyond imagining. A story of second chances, of healing, of family created through both blood and choice. A story that proved it's never too late to find your way home. If you believe in the power of second chances and that it's never too late to rebuild what was broken, hit that like button now. Only those with hearts unwilling to forgive or grow would scroll past without showing support. Comment second chances if this story touched your heart and reminded you that sometimes the longest road leads exactly where you're meant to be.